Game of Thrones, the rage of spreading flames. Hey! Look who's back for more adventures. We love having you here to continue this story that keeps us all awake. Important note, all of this is pure fiction, so don't try any techniques you hear here in real life. Your neighbor might call the cops. This amazing novel and all its rights belong to the original author. We're just the ones giving it voice and drama. Are you enjoying the show? Prove it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and leaving that like that motivates us so much. And if you want to support us and get VIP access to exclusive content, our Ko-Fi is waiting for you. Chapter 51 Shadow Killer. As night fell, Renly did not return to Fengxi Castle, but came to the big tent camp outside the city and ordered the subordinate army to launch a general attack at dawn to destroy Stannis' army. After Renly gave the order, she returned to the independent tent under the escort of Sirs Aemon Kui and Robert Roose. Seeing this, Ed followed him. He wanted Leonor to join him, but found that this guy disappeared after returning to the camp in the separate tent. Renly spread her arms and let a tall knight wearing a covered helmet remove the heavy glazed green armor for him. When he felt Ed following the tent behind him, he couldn't help but mutter, "Mr. Ed, I'm going to rest." His words were refusal and rejection, but Ed did not leave as he wished. "Renly, Your Majesty, I want to make a request to you." "This is a legitimate request and a request that is good for you," Ed spoke with a calm face. "Forgive Stannis' life?" "I've given him a chance," Renly said. "You should learn more from my other brother," and he knew I wouldn't agree, so he won't say more. The airflow blew the candles in the big tent. As the candlelight swayed, Ed narrowed his eyes. He suddenly found that there seemed to be a shadow in the tent, and a black human-shaped shadow floated from outside the house to behind Renly, who had his arms wide open. Shadow? Ed couldn't help blinking his eyes, and when he opened his eyes again, he heard a female scream. "Sir." The tall knight who was removing his armor for Renly raised his head and looked at the black figure floating in from outside the house and staying behind the lord, and couldn't help but scream, "What's the name?" Renly was a little impatient, but halfway through his words, he was cut into his throat by a sword condensed from the shadow. The plate armor specially created by Tobu Mott, which is both gorgeous and tough, is torn apart like fine paper under the shadow blade. Renly's first half of his chest was cut horizontally, and blood surged up like a fountain. He raised the shadow behind and the armor-removing knight in front of him. The tall knight was covered in blood, and the screams under his face became even more sharp, like a desperate woman hearing the screams in the tent. Aemon and Robert, who were guarding the gate, broke in. Seeing Renly's body squirting blood, his heart suddenly became cold. After waiting for a closer look, he stood at Renly. The human-shaped shadow behind him turned around and floated to him at a speed that was lightning speed. "Be careful." Ed couldn't help but scream when he saw the moving shadow. He immediately pulled out the heirloom sword Han Ice from his waist. The sword blades covered with fine lines had not yet been used, and the two knights in front had been killed. The human-shaped shadow killed 3 people in a row and moved outside the tent, but she didn't expect the tent to float away naturally, and a bunch of figures rushed in from outside. Encircle it. Leonor wore black armor and stepped into the bloody tent with the knights led by Loras, and pointed the red mace in his hand at the human shadow. "Wow." The knights around were shocked when they saw the shadows that had just killed 3 people. Not only did they not come forward to surround each other, but they were invisible to disintegrate. As for the human-shaped shadow that appeared on the voluntarily in Leonor, they immediately it swept over like a gust of wind. "Idiot." Leonor could not help but curse when he noticed the fear of the surrounding knights, and the nail in his hand slammed the shadow head towards the pounced wherever the 7-pointed star-shaped hammer swung. The black smoke spread out and rolled, and the black shadowed head gathered as it scattered. The silhouette-shaped sword in his hand still swung horizontally, attacking Leonor's upper chest. He was very stunning to cut him into 2 pieces like Renly, but Leonor was not as careless as Renly. Leonor took a step back, avoided the shadowy sword edge, and took out a piece of white paper from under the armor. The paper was covered with purple-red drawing symbols, and followed the throw forward and stuck to the human-shaped shadow monster. The white paper spontaneously ignited. The purple fire burst out, and a loud bang, and the strong smell of gunpowder flew, making all the knights in the tent unable to help but cover their ears. When they looked up again, they saw gunpowder filled with gunpowder. Slight black smoke flew away. "What is that?" a knight asked everyone's questions at this time. "Shadow Killer, the masterpiece of the Asasha shadow binding." Leonor used the purple thunder paper talisman to blow up the Shadow Killer, sure that it would not appear again, and he breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Sure enough, there was no spell that gunpowder could not deal with. "Where's this thing?" Ed walked out of the smoke from the tent, and was interrupted by a burst of exclamation before he could finish his questions. The knights realized it and found that Renly had turned into two pieces. Among them, Lolas reacted the most. The knight in the armor of flowers picked up Renly's head and showed a painful expression. He first let out a long howl. Then he stood up angrily and said, "This is Stannis doing it, it must be him." Leonor walked closer and looked at Renly's head that was connected to his shoulders. He felt a little bitter in his heart, and tears oozed out of his eyes. "I'm going to kill Stannis, who would you like to go with me?" The furious Knight of Flowers sent an invitation, and there was silence in the tent. "Notify all soldiers and launch an attack on Stannis troops overnight, regardless of their high or low status, even if it is a beggar. The person who kills the Earl will get his fiefdom to be his count, the person who kills the Viscount will get his fiefdom to be his Viscount, and the person who kills the Knight will get his manor to be his Knight. Only recognize the head but not the person. Swear in the name of His Majesty Renly and the Seven Gods." Leonor raised the mace in his hand and said a word that made all the knights present breathe heavily. "I'm willing to be a pioneer." Lolas put down Renly's head and begged directly to Leonor on one knee. "The pioneer did not kneel out here. Go out and prove it with your actions." Leonor pointed at Stannis's barrack outside the tent with a red mace. When Loras saw Leonor's actions, he immediately stood up and ran towards the darkness. After a while, the barrack started to clamor, and a group of more than a dozen knights rode out of the camp and rushed to Stannis' camp on the beach. There were the first batch and the second batch. Almost instantly, the entire barracks became irritated. Groups of knights led Wukong and rode fierce horses to attack Stannis' barracks. Fires and shouts of killing resounded across the coast, and Stannis did not expect a night attack here. He was completely killed and caught off guard. The camps of thousands of people were captured one after another, and there were also warships parked on the beach. Then a ship turned its bow and left, and those who did not leave in time were all ignited by the flames in the big tent under the Windsniff fort. Leonor stood side by side with Ed, looking at the ignited ships in the distance. Behind them, Renly's bodies were spliced together and placed in the tent. The tall, plump-lipped buck-toothed female knight and the arrival of Katane are vigiling for him. Chapter 52 Declaration. With a fishy sea breeze blowing, Leonor looked up and saw a loud shout of killing on the beach. A bright red flashed across the sky, like a bloody tear in the sky. "Do you have anything to say?" Leonor looked up and looked at Ed, who was speaking next to him. "What do you want me to say?" "Swear to me, it has nothing to do with you." Ed's voice trembled slightly. He suspected that I designed to kill Renly. Leonor showed a look of surprise. This honest man could have such an idea. He was so excited by the cruelty of Game of Thrones. "I swear, in the name of the Seven Gods, I absolutely did not harm Renly." Leonor did it without hesitation. "That shadow killer was really not created by him. After dawn, you will be the new king. I want to return to the north." Catelyn and Lisa, as well as Sansa and Arya. Ed closed his eyes and made a request to return to the north. "Take it all back. Pay attention to the direction of the Great Wall." Leonor did not object, so he asked Ed to pay attention to the defense of the Great Wall. Although Westeros is fighting happily now, it is an internal struggle of mankind after all. And the final enemy is still White Walkers on the other end of the Great Wall. Pay attention to the direction of the Great Wall. What does this mean? There is no one else on that side except for the ice and snow and the savages. It's just that I'm just guarding against White Walkers. Hearing Leonor's reminder, Ed couldn't help but have many questions in his mind. He suspected that there were words in Leonor's words and felt that there were many abnormalities in his words, but he couldn't say it. In the end, he could only sigh and do it, and there was no words all night, and when the red sun rose from the sky, Stannis' army had been driven away from the shores of the Windbreath Castle. Leonor's army won a great victory. After the victory, Leonor sat directly in Finksy Castle and began to reward him according to his merits and fulfill his promise he made last night. The Stormland Knights achieved fruitful results last night. They killed thousands of enemies. After careful statistics on the heads, there were 13 Viscounts and 137 knights. The highest one came from Sir Santana Aiken, the Count of the Isolated Island, was killed by Adele, the Knight Attendant of the Copper Gate City. Adele from the Copper Gate City, in the name of His Majesty Renly, from today on, you will be the Earl of the Isolated Island. Leonor held up a mace in his hand, and was restrained by the eyes of the envious and jealous knights. The attendant Adelaide made the seal. "Long live His Majesty Renly, long live His Majesty Leonor." Adele kneeled on his knees, shouted from the bottom of his heart, then fell down and kissed Leonor's instep to show his loyalty. Leonor ignored Adele's shouting. After he expressed his feelings, he walked down one by one and rewarded other people who had obtained the head, and rewarded the title and land according to the level of the enemy they killed. Anyway, don't he paid for money and land, and deprived them all of them from the enemy each time the reward was given. All the rewarded people shouted, "Long live your majesty." The soldiers watching were not only hot and loud, but the scene was very enthusiastic. After Leonor and others sealed the block, they waved the nail in their hand, suppressing the noisy sound of the crowd. "You don't have to call me your majesty, that's a honorable title to king. Do you think I should sit on that iron throne?" Leonor asked, a piece of words that made everyone look at each other, and before they could come back to their senses, he continued, "My brother, former King Robert, died in a vein. My brother, the uncrowned King Renly, died on the way to avenge his brother. I, Leonor Baratheon I, herewith the 7 gods swear by the name that I will never ascend the throne without avenging my brother Robert. At the same time, I promise you here, the land of the storm and the land of the river, and all other soldiers who are willing to help me, follow me to you. The king takes revenge, like the sun rises east and sets west, like the sea never dries up. I swear that there can only be one of the Baratheons in the storm and the Lannisters in the west. Those brave men who help me revenge, no matter what your origin is, as long as you can kill Tywin Lannister, you can become the Duke of Caen City, Lannister Port, Yanho City, Yangji Hall, Corn City, Silver Mountain City, Deep Crying City, Cad Valley City." Every time Leonor issued a place name, the breathing of the nobles and knights present increased a little, and in the end everyone's eyes turned red. "Go and bring my words to all the warriors you can see. I am Leonor Baratheon I. This is what I have said. This is definitely not a grain of sand drifting with the wind. He can compare to gold and stone. As long as you avenge me for killing my brother, your name will be passed down for generations and will be glorious forever." Leonor made an oath that was incompatible with the western region. With one hand, Leonor waved his hammer. The nobles and knights present immediately learned their intentions and turned around to get some clothes. They were going to QKO to die. No, they should be participating in the battle. After inciting countless nobles and knights to join the war, Leonor did not rush to the Bridge of Bitterness, but entrusted the Windsnow Castle to the trusted Sir Cotton Panelis, and prepared to set off with it to return to King's Landing. Before leaving, Sir Cotton Panelis stopped him and asked someone to bring a boy and a tall female knight, Mr. Leonor, this is a Drakestorm, and his mother is Dylan Florent. Cottonella had black hair and blue eyes, but a boy with a very big ear to Leon. "And you introduced, I understand." Leonor looked at the timid boy and nodded slightly. This was another illegitimate son of Robert. His mother was from the Florent family in the Riverside land. Cotton wanted to adopt him. "This is not possible. You should continue to take care of him and Fancy Castle." "Mr. Panelis, I believe you. Thank you for your trust. I will definitely take good care of this child." Cotton nodded to Leonor, thanked him for his trust, and then pointed to the tall female knight behind him and said, "This is Brienne Tass. He is Lord Renly's guard, from Newland Hall." The female knight who was pointed to by Cotton was tall, more than 2 meters long, only slightly shorter than the Demon Mountain. She was quite majestic in a panel armor, but she looked slightly bad. Her lips were extremely thick, and her teeth were slapped out. Apart from her blue eyes, she can be said to have no highlights as a woman, and she is indeed the legendary beauty. "Sir Leonor, she feels that she has not been able to protect Lord Renly, so she wants to be loyal to you." Cotton hesitated to say something else, but she didn't want Leonor on the opposite side to nod directly. "Then come to my side as a guard. For the time being, you will be granted 10 households. If you can make meritorious service, you will be given a reward." Leonor did not dislike Brienne's appearance. As a woman, she had no highlights, but the physique is a member of the general who can compete with the Demon Mountain and the Hunter. "I want to be an Imperial Guard." Brienne spoke first, her voice a little hoarse, unlike a woman, very rough, and she said she didn't want to be an Imperial Guard. The Imperial Guards were a guard established by the Targaryen dynasty and imitating the Great Wall Night Watchmen in the north. They were composed of the 7 strongest knights in the kingdom. Because they were wearing white robes, they were also called White Knights or White Robes. The Night Watchman also has a vow of not marrying a wife, not having a fief, not having a child, and being loyal to the king for life is the highest honor among knights. Yixiang Iron Guard. "Now," Leonor asked, "I am willing to work hard for it." Brienne knew that taking the initiative to claim the title of Yixiang Guard was inappropriate, and quickly expressed that she was not capable of doing so now, but was willing to work hard for this goal. "Okay, Then I'm looking forward to your performance." Seeing that Brienne still knew how to advance and retreat, Leonor couldn't help but nod in his heart. This legendary beauty is worth cultivating. Chapter 53 Tyrael and Chapter X27, S Conditions. When Leonor brought the message of Renly's death back to King's Landing City, the people in the imperial meeting were still a little confused. They could never have imagined that another king would die in just a few days. "Your Highness, I just received 2 news. In the Iron Islands, Baron of the Greyjoy family regained his kingship, and the Iron Islands no longer accept the jurisdiction of the Iron Throne," Varys reported to Leonor in shock in his report. "The latest situation, who is the other news that he is king?" Leonor asked expressionlessly. "Stannis," Varys simply replied to her name. Stannis used a raven to send letters to many lords, asking them to be loyal to him. This happened after Robert's death, but here in King's Landing, the news that Leonor only got after he went to the Stormland was severely lagging behind. 1 king died, 2 kings came. Lannister did not make any claim. Leonor raised his eyebrows slightly. "Did Lannister, who was the core of this storm, do not do anything?" "No." Varys lowered his eyebrows and looked pleased. "They will soon become king." Leonor knew what Lannister meant. The Lannister family robbed Cersei and her children, but they were not in a hurry to claim support for Joffrey. A potential hint that Joffrey could be exchanged for James Lannister. It was the old lion's decision. "Perhaps only he can see through the Iron Throne, but unfortunately he is facing me." Leonor sneered in his heart. He had never thought of reconciliation with the Lannister family. He had released a declaration and reward. Those who killed Tywin would be awarded the title of Duke's Territory, Rock City. This declaration destined that Baratheon and Lannister could only live one, without any possibility of easing. "Your Highness, don't we make any statement?" Balliston couldn't help but step forward and asked. 2 kings had appeared in the 7 kingdoms of Westeros. Did Lyanna not make any statement at all? In the King's Hall, Balliston, Pycelle and Varys, the Ed Stark family and other nobles living in King's Landing all looked at Leonor. "Pycelle!" Lyanna shouted, and Pycelle, who was stunned in the crowd, shook his body. Then he bent forward and bowed to respond. "Release the crows to the nations to express my meaning. Lannister brothers murdered the king and rebelled the country. The 7 kingdoms and even other places, regardless of their high or low status, men, women, and young, as long as they can kill Tywin Lannister, then you can get his title and Caen City." This method can be used on any noble in the western region. In the wide hall, Leonor's words were clear, his voice was shocking, and the content of his words was shocking everyone. Other nobles except Ed were all pale, unlike the knights and nobles in the military camp of Fanxi Castle, those who think of making achievements, while those nobles in the King's Hall think of Leonor inciting civilians to attack the nobles, and they are substituted for the nobles of the western frontier. Perspective. "Your Highness," Pycelle looked pale and patrolled his left and right with his eyes, wanting to get some support, but wherever his eyes could see the nobles who were frightened like him. "Don't I understand enough?" Leonor was dissatisfied with Pycelle's cowardly look. "Your Highness, this is not in line with the law." Pycelle changed his usual attitude. He did not dare to use a crow to convey such news, as it would make him a thorn in the eyes and a thorn in the flesh of the nobles in the world. "Since you don't want to do it, then let's change someone else to be my Grand Secretary." Leonor waved, and immediately ran 2 guards, one on the left and the other on the right, and dragged him directly go out. He directly removed Pycelle's position as the Grand Secretary, and Leonor ordered the scribe's subordinate Pycelle to release the ravens for him. After Leonor reiterated his declaration of incompatibleness with Lannister and his raven, he began to prepare for Lannister's counterattack. The first priority is naturally to deepen the military construction. Leonor entrusts Balliston, Dort and others to expand the army with absolute power, and based on the existing 2,000 soldiers in the Midsummer Hall and the 4,000 golden robes who eliminated redundant personnel, the goal is establish 3 regiments and reorganize an army of 10,000 people. While organizing and establishing an army, Lyanna also issued clear documents on fiefs and private land ownership, stipulating that as long as you join the army, you can obtain land distribution and exempt land taxation, which made the recruitment affairs of Balliston and others more convenient and smooth. The military construction is just one of the most critical things at the moment, and in fact, it is to connect with Renly's political allies. After his death, the day after Leonor issued the declaration with the raven, he welcomed the messenger of the Tyrion family in the riverside, Garland Tyrion. Garland Tyrion is the second son of the Tyrion family in the High Court, Loras and Margaret's brother, Vela's younger brother. and he brought 3 conditions for alliance between the Tyrion family in the river desert. The first condition required Leonor to continue the engagement between Renly and Margaret and marry Margaret Tyrion, so that the blood of the Tyrion family would be glorified. The second condition is that after Leonor ascends to the Iron Throne in the future, his imperial meeting must have a place for the Tyrion family, and Miss Tyrion himself hopes to be the king's hand. The third condition is that the Tyrion family requires Leonor to reward the western border to the Tyrion family. Leonor made full promises to the first article for these 3 conditions, and to the second and third articles. With limited promises, the Tyrion family will definitely have a seat in the imperial meeting, but it cannot be guaranteed to be the king's hand. As for the third western territory, Leonor asked the Tyrion family to fight for it himself. His declarations were equally valid for the Tyrion family. As long as any Tyrion takes over Tywin's head, then the title of the Duke, he will personally enfeoff the fiefdom of Qing City. The Tyrion family was extremely satisfied with Leonor's response. Miss Tyrion directly sent someone to send Margaret to King's Landing, and at the same time wrote a letter to Leonor, which exaggeratedly expressed his Tenwan Dejan is ready to go. As long as Leonor gives an order, he will immediately lead his army to capture Qing City. Leonor had long heard of the reputation of this inflatable fish man, so he naturally would not disappoint him. He wrote a letter himself, asking him to govern his 100,000 troops and wipe out the western border for himself. After the war is over, he will be crowned in Qing City and officially marry his daughter Margaret, making her his queen. After talking and coaxing, the coalition forces stationed in the river and storm areas near Qko began to turn north and attack Qing City along Golden Avenue. At the same time, Leonor got news in King's Landing that the Stark family in the north, led by the young wolf Lord Robb Stark, began to move south under the name of assisting the Tully family in the Panther City. Chapter 54 Red God Spell. When Leonor received the news, the vanguard of the north had already crossed the neck, and the Duke of North Ed Stark and his family had not left King's Landing. Leonor informed Ed in time about the news of the North's troops, which shocked the North's Duke. "Aren't you kidding me?" Ed asked Leonor subconsciously. "Does Bachelor Luwin from the North have the habit of joking?" He wrote this letter. Leonor did not answer and asked back, "Of course not." Ed shook his head directly. Bachelor Luwin, an old bachelor who had served in Winterfell for decades. He occasionally made a humorous job, but he would not make such jokes. "That's fine, Lord Ed. Do you still have to go back to the north now?" Leonor asked Ed's plan. The Duke of North was planning to take a boat to Bravos and then return to the north. Bagang arrived in Winterfell, but his son brought the army. "Do he still want to go back like this?" "I'm going to go to Higiandi." Ed's expression was very gloomy. What did Robb's child think? In this case, bringing the army to the south, so how could he return to the north? "Do you need my help?" Leonor saw Ed's complaint. "Don't blame Robb. He is a child, and it is normal for him to worry about his uncle and grandfather. Let him perform well." The declaration is equally effective for the people of the north. "No, I don't want them to join the war." Ed directly rejected Leonor's words. He had no desire for the West. What he valued was only the safety and honor of the people, no matter what kind of war it was. All are not honorable, but they have entered the war now. If you want to persuade them now, it may not work. Leonor couldn't help but exhort him when he saw Ed being stupid again. "As long as I am still the Duke of the North for one day," Ed shook his head. "As long as he is still the Duke of the North for one day, Robb must listen to him." "Yes, I can't persuade you." Seeing Ed's posture as the Duke of the North was rising again, Leonor couldn't help but shake his head in his heart, but asked calmly, "Do I need to send a few people to escort Mrs. Catelyn back to Winterfell?" He said, looking up at Catelyn, Sansa and Arya behind Ed. These 3 women were frightened by the last night attack on Prime Minister's Tower, even though they had been determined to marry Joffrey before. Sansa is now eager to return to the north. "No, you send a few people to Higian with me." Ed asked for his guards, turned to look at his wife and 2 daughters, Catelyn and the others, before Ed made his decision. Mrs. Catelyn interrupted directly, "I'll go to Higiandi with you. I want to see my father, Mrs. Catelyn's father is the current lord of the city of Benlu City and the Duke of Higian. This old man is an old man from Tywin and Jon. He has been in a semi-retired state due to his years of illness. It is normal for Catelyn to want to meet her father. Dad, I'm, too." Sansa also spoke and wanted to go to Higiandi. "Where can I be safer in the world than my parents?" Unfortunately, she was interrupted by her mother, Mrs. Catelyn, before she could finish her words. "Now, Sansa, you and Arya stay in King's Landing. Mrs. Catelyn asked her eldest daughter. The land of the river has become a battlefield and she cannot let her daughter go with her. Mom, Sansa pleaded with a slight tone, help me take care of Arya and Lisa. Catelyn's tone was undeniable. Okay, Sansa couldn't refute her parents compared to Sansa's helplessness. Arya, who was holding Catelyn's thigh, grimacing at Leonor, without any regrets of being stuck in King's Landing after entrusting the two children and sister to Leonor, the Starks and his wife set off with 30 guards and rushed to the riverside city north by land. Leonor saw off Stark and his wife and settled the sisters Sansa and Arya, and was not idle either. While urging Ballistan to train the army quickly, he continued to shake people against the Lannister family. He sent an envoy to the south of Dorne and invited the Martell family to participate in the expedition to the western border of Caen City while fighting against Lannister from all aspects. Leonor remembered Lanley's death and became afraid of black magic such as Shadow Killer. He asked him to find him and remain in King's Landing City. The Red God believer Barry Dondarrion and the Red-robed Mere Monk Soros learned about the spells of the Red God priests. Westeros' mainstream beliefs are the Seven Gods and the Old Gods, but the Red Gods are also preaching in this area. They are mainly popular in the frontiers. In the past, they tried to preach to the Mad King Iris II, but unfortunately they did not succeed. Only a few nobles converted to Rallo, the King of Light, who was the Red God. Barry Dondarrion, from the Dondarrion family, was one of the converted nobles, and the one who brought him to convert was Soros, a red-robed monk from Mill. Soros is an obese monk, shaved with a monk's head and a shawl woven in red wool. It is covered with dark patches and emits the smell of wine and meat. He's a wine and meat monk at first glance. Although he was a wine monk, Soros was indeed very famous. He had already been in King's Landing during Robert's reign. He had excellent sword skills. He heard that he could also play a flaming sword and participated in the king's competitions held by the king many times, and he can win considerable awards every time. It is precisely because of those competition prizes that he can eat and drink well in Jumlin City. Now that Jumlin City has changed Leonor as the leader, the red-robed monk followed very obediently. After hearing that Leonor was interested in the magic of the Red God, he took the initiative to ask Leonor for his own sword, want to demonstrate the legendary flaming sword magic because he had been assassinated by the Faceless. Leonor improved his defense from all sides, among which restricting the wear of weapons and armor by those who meet. Now, when Soros wants to wear a sword, he hesitated. It satisfies him, Your Highness, please see. Soros, who was fat, held the sword in both hands and leaned his head against the sword. After meditating for a while, he was so fierce that he raised the sword in his hand, and a blazing flame immediately ignited on the blade. How did it do it? Leonor looked at the blade of the sword that turned into a torch in Soros's hand, with a very surprised expression. He had just checked the sword, and there was no wildfire or other substance on it. How did he ignite it? What burns? This is the power of my lord. Soros put on the expression of a charlatan and put down the sword in his hand. The flames on the blade slowly extinguished, and high-temperature smoke came out from the scorching iron sword. Talk about the key points. Leonor was not listened to Soros' memorization of scriptures. Okay. This is a spell. I don't know if it has anything to do with my lord yet. In short, I have this ability. As long as I concentrate, I can ignite the flames on the blade. Soros met lie. Ano looked a little nervous. This king shouldn't want to learn this kind of magic. How many times can you use this kind of spell every day? Do you know other spells? Leonor did want to learn it, but he knew what he meant by looking at Soros' vague tone, so he didn't ask directly, but just asked Huang indirectly. The use of divine spells. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55 Sand Snake Group. When Robert usurped the throne, the Lannister family's army captured King's Landing before the rebels. They wanted to ravage the entire King's Landing. The Lannister family's vassal, Demon Mountain, raped and killed Prince Rhaega's wife, Elia, the wife of Prince Rhaega, Martell, and killed her and Rhaega's two children. This incident made the Martell family extremely angry, but because the times had come, Robert sat firmly on the Iron Throne, and Cersei of Lannister became the queen. The Martell family knew that it was meaningless to denounce this matter again, so they could only force to accept peace. But that anger did not fade with time. The reason why Dorne's Red Viper Oberon in the original plot is willing to serve as a proxy knight for the little demon is because it gives him the opportunity to fight against Demon Mountain, the enemy who raped his sister. Now that the opportunity to officially start a war with the Lannister family is in front of you, Leonor believes that the Martell family will definitely not refuse as he wished. After his messenger arrived at Yangji City to convey his request, the Martell family sent an envoy to King's Landing to visit him with a fleet. This envoy is Oberon Martell, who is known as the Red Viper in the Seven Kingdoms. He is the younger brother of the current Prince Dorne Martell and the former Princess Elia Martell, who is the younger brother of the current Princess Dorne and his former Princess Elia Martell. In addition to himself, he also brought a mercenary army called the Sand Snake Group to King's Landing City. When Leonor came to the dock to greet Oberon, he saw a group of sand snakes. They were a group of samurai wrapped in headscarves and masked warriors, mostly wearing composite armor made of animal skins, cloth robes and iron sheets, with a scimitar on his waist, carrying a bow and arrow, holding a spear, occasionally holding a short but well-proportioned Dorne horse. This was the first time he saw an army outside of tradition. It felt shabby overall, but to be honest, all of these people were filled with a sharp breath, and the queue was breathing and exhaling as if it were a whole. This is the real teams that have been on the battlefield. While Leonor was thinking, Sialio, behind him, came closer and shouted, "Your Highness, here you come." Hearing the reminder of the close-fitting swordsman, Leonor retracted his gaze of the Sand Snake Group in the distance, lowered his gaze, and saw a small team walking towards him on the road ahead. The first person in this team was not wearing a yellow turban on his head like others. His shiny black hair was neatly combed, and under the point of the beauty was an olive face, and under the yellow cloak, a delicate one. The complex red armor wraps the body. Following this man was 4 or 5 followers wrapped in yellow turbans and thick robes. Among them was a man holding a flag with a golden sun painted on it and was penetrated by a spear. This is the golden gun penetration of the Martell family of the royal family in Dorne. Except for the man holding the flag, most of the others in the team were slim, with a headscarf covering their faces, showing gray or blue eyes, holding spears, scimitars, daggers and other weapons, and were actually fully armed women. Prince Dorne, the red poisonous snake Oberon Martell, walked straight to Leonor and bowed slightly. It seemed polite, but his eyes were always staring at Leonor and said, "What should I call you, His Highness Oberon?" "Just call me Leonor." Leonor gave his respects slightly. "Isn't it the king?" Oberon is over 40 years old, but his appearance is not at all. His olive skin is smooth, his expression is full of chicken unruly, and he has no scruples on his words. "I swore to avenge my brother and finally crowned me in Qing City. Before I could, I was still the prince of the Summer Hall, not the king." Leonor answered freely, "But you exercise the power that only the king has." A baron's words meant something and mobilized more than half of the 7 kingdoms to encircle Lannister in the western border. This is the power that only the king has. The reason why Leonor was able to mobilize the 4 kingdoms of Huendi, Dorne, Northland, and Hegeandi to attack Lannister was fundamentally because of Lannister's arrogant personality that made him enemies all over the world. He was just a coincidence. That's it, but this is the truth. "But you can't say that. The king who is recognized is the king." Leonor pretended to be a little bitch and tactfully said that I, as a king, still rely on you to give face. Haha. Oberon couldn't help but twitch his face when he saw Leonor's calm expression, not knowing how to reply. "Your Highness, are you going to go directly to the front line or do you want to stay here?" Leonor asked Oberon's next plan. "Of course we go to the western frontier, but we don't understand the situation of the war yet. Which roads can we go to the western frontier?" Oberon was very active in his march, and he could no longer wait to kill Lannister. "You have 2 roads. One is to go north from King's Avenue to Hegeandi, and the Tully family in Hegeandi, and the Northern Coalition forces led by Robb Stark, and follow Hegeandi to Qing Fort." "Where is another way?" Oberon asked. "The other road is to go west from King's Landing Golden Avenue, joining with the noble coalition forces in the River Bay and Stormland, and finally follow the Golden Avenue toward Qing Fort." Leonor gave another route. "It sounds like Tywin Lannister will be killed right away," Oberon joked. "Haha, it's impossible for Tywin Lannister to withstand waves of attacks after wave, causing civil strife in the coalition, and then take advantage of the chaos to win." Leonor also joked, but smiled. He suddenly had a sudden blow in his heart. You should know that in the original plot, Lannister was always beaten by Stark, and eventually won by colluding with the Frey family and using an outsider like a bloody wedding. This is something unsure. "Your Majesty, if I ask you, Are you willing to bear the logistics of our Sand Snake group in this war? Oberon mentioned something to Leonor with a smile. Logistics? Is it only responsible for the diet? Leonor came to his senses and asked back. Yes, not only people, but also war horses. A baron did not ask for military pay, but only logistics. This is a very important thing. Without this, there is no war. They are Dorneys and cannot get any supplies here. If they do not get any supplies here, they will not get any supply, can only rob the troops. How many people and horses have you brought? Leonor did not agree immediately. 200 mouths, 500 horses. Oberon reported two core numbers with a ratio of more than 1 to 2. Oberon wanted to make a breakthrough with light equipment. After hearing Oberon's numbers, Leonor pondered for a while, without saying a word, but shouted at Arad, who acted as a guard on the other side, "Go and inform Dorit, and let him prepare 200 men and 500 horses for food and water for our Highness Oberon." Leonor waited for Arad to leave, turned his head to look at Oberon, and saw that the other party also bowed to him. Seeing this, he waved his hand indifferently and reminded him, "Your Highness, if you need more, tell my men directly, and they will do their best to satisfy you." Chapter 56 Recruitment. A baron and his Sand Snake group rested in King's Landing for a day. After each received enough food for 10 days, he set out on his own and set out along Golden Avenue towards Qing City. There are too few people in Dorne, and the road they chose is not good. They should go from King's Avenue to the River City to join the army in the north. Bolliston was not optimistic about the route chosen by Oberon. Dorne has been in ancient times since ancient times. There were many wars with the Stormland and River Bends, and Oberon once injured and disabled the eldest son of Tyrell's family in the competition. This trip is very likely to cause conflicts. Bolliston, select 1,000 soldiers for me from the army you trained. Leonor ignored Bolliston's concerns. Your Majesty, you plan. Bolliston showed a hopeful look. Do as you do. Leonor only asked Bolliston to obey the order. Yes. Bolliston showed a joyful look, paused his head suddenly, and then turned to select soldiers. Dorit, you must ensure that all 1,000 soldiers are covered in armor, each with at least one spear, a sword, and the more bows and arrows, the better. At the same time, prepare as many horses and wooden carts as possible, and fill them with food and water. Leonor then made various requests to Dorit beside him. Yes, Varys, put the intelligence of the Western Army, including the number of people, armed forces, distribution, population base, and food storage. Leonor then said to the bald fat man with his hands in his sleeve, "Sir, I'm afraid Tywin Lannister can't even say this." Varys showed a look of surprise on his face. Westeros was a knight system. The knights advocated bravery and fighting alone, and the lords also paid more attention to the knights. Neither the lord himself knew how many people could be pulled out in each manner, nor did his little birds know. Then let's estimate. Look at how many territories there are in the western border, how many cities, how many manors, and the population of each place, and then estimate how many troops they can dispatch. Leonor was not very satisfied. Varys, this intelligence minister is a bit too miserable. Okay, Varys could only respond. Vincent, send a crow to the Windbreath Castle and ask Catallo to recruit the Stormland Knights who are willing to fight to King's Landing for me, with a period of 3 days. Yes, within 3 days, Leonor recruited and allocated 1,000 infantry, 400 knights and more than 1,500 mules and horses. After all the weapons and supplies were complete, he prepared to head north along King's Avenue on the march route. Leonor made the opposite choice from Oberon, preparing to go north from King's Avenue, along Hegian Avenue to the River City, and then attack Ed and the others, and then attacked Qing City together. Compared with the River Bay land that already has political alliances and the Stormland that is detained with interests, Leonor feels that he needs to use his heart to strengthen his understanding of the noble knights in the northern border and the Hegian land. As for the future when facing them, my eyes were dark. Leonor beat the plan full, but the action to the north had to be terminated before it was even carried out. The Raven brought back the latest battle report on the southern line. The coalition forces of the River Bay and Stormland led by Mace Tyrell were defeated by the Western Frontier Army led by Kevin Lannister on Golden Avenue. Mace Tyrell himself captured. More than half of the troops collapsed directly. Leonor was numb when he heard the news. He could not have imagined that this inflatable fish master would be so delicious. The food is the only one, and the mess left by the inflatable fish must be cleaned up. Leonor modified his march route overnight, allowing the recruited and dispatched troops to turn overnight, marching to the west along the Golden Avenue, and he led Brienne, Arad, and Alex Oakert and Gloss Booth. 50 guards including Lewin and other royal guards rode their horses to the front line first before leaving. Leonor entrusts all the affairs of King's Landing to Burliston, allowing Dorrit and Vincent to serve as his deputy. Varys cooperates with the support and can be with Cottonay of Fanxy Castle if necessary. Paunless takes care of each other. Teacher, I'll ask you for everything here, Leonor asked Burliston. This time, Burliston wanted to follow him to the western frontier as a pioneer. The current King's Landing city seems calm, but in fact it is undercurrent. Stannis is still eyeing Dragonstone Island. His army is not worth worrying about, but the black magic of the Red God Priest has to be guarded against. He cannot let Orden when sent face the threat, so he could only trouble Burliston to take charge, hoping that Stannis would be merciless about some Burliston's reputation and show mercy. Your Highness, please rest assured. I will definitely guarantee the existence of King's Landing. If you have something that cannot be handled on the front line, you can consult Count Landeo Talai of the Corner Tomb. Burliston felt helpless, but more it is a sense of mission entrusted to be mission assured. While accepting the task, it also puts forward opinions on Leonor. This future king does not have large-scale battle formation experience. He needs the assistance of experienced generals. In addition to himself, only King's Landeo Talai can use it, but I don't know if this future king will mind other side. Thank you, I will. Leonor carefully wrote down Burliston's words, and after asking for help, he turned around and galloped to the front line with his team at night. Golden Avenue is the natural dividing line between the river and the west border, directly connecting Junglin City and Kayan City on the west border. Leonor led his team to gallop overnight, and the next morning he saw scattered defeated troops in the wilderness. Most of them are from Huon, wearing cloth clothes or simple leather armor, walking in the wilderness. The better ones carry a spear, and the worse ones directly support a stick, and in groups of 3 or 2, without any frustration at all. Instead, they are not ashamed of losing. Talk and laugh, as if you end your outing and go home. They are all followers of the Manor Knight. Westeros does not have a system of military service. The so-called soldiers, our entourage, is brought out by knights from the manor, or entourage is recruited by lords from the territory. Conscientious lords will pay salaries, while unscrupulous lords' knights require submission. Working in labor is a waste of time, and sometimes you don't even have enough food. The people are clear about many things. As long as they leave the boss's side on the battlefield, they will go directly to fish. When the defeat is broken, they will be even more happy and can find a way home directly. As for national hatred, it is the relationship between the Lord and the Jez has nothing to do with them. Even half of the Brown Star Leonor understood the situation of the defeated soldiers, so he didn't say much, but slowed down the speed of the horse under his seat and asked our Rod to beat a yellow flag with a stag with a crown on it. Is the royal flag of the Baratheon family in this way? Leonor and his group of tall horses, the yellow flag of the crowned stags, flickered, facing west against the collapsed crowd, attracting the people who were looking for the way to look sideways frequently. Although most of the people ignored Leonor and were still looking for a way home towards the south and the west, there were also a few people. They saw Leonor's cavalry team, quietly turned around and followed him, hanging from afar behind them. Chapter 57. Arriving on the front line. Leonor was wearing a golden robe on his black armor, a yellow flag on his head, holding a red mace, riding a black war horse, and walking on the Golden Avenue with a team of 50 riders. As the sun rose above his head, his team began to meet the Riverland Knights wearing armor or scales. These scattered knights are much more capable than the soldiers. Even if they are defeated, they are still fully equipped with military equipment. Occasionally, there are still 1 or 2 riding horses. When they see the oncoming yellow flag, they will greet them directly, saying that they are certain earls, a certain Jaz and the barons. Lord Leonor did not respond directly to these knights who came to meet, but instructed Brienne to deal with it for herself and put them around. When the sky became dim, the team around Leonor had increased to about 80 cavalry, and more than 100 infantrymen followed him. The knights and soldiers who were temporarily approaching took the initiative to share the task of camping at night, and Leonor asked the royal guard Alex Oakert to preside over the dry food and drinking water, to share the dry food and drinking water with them until dawn. Again depart, continuing to march on the Golden Avenue. The collapsed knights kept coming closer, and the troops following Leonor also began to catch up. Just arrived by myself, and also dragged wooden carts with mules and horses, filled with food and water after 3 consecutive days of rushing. Leonor led the vanguard of 400 cavalry to join the remnants of the coalition forces led by Lando Tali and Loras Tilly. Leonor asked Loras and Lando Tali about the specific situation of the battle as soon as he met. Now the siege of the Western Front organized by Leano is mainly divided into two lines. The coalition forces of the Huon and Stormland are located on the Western Front battlefield. This front was first formed by Renly's order. It was a coalition of noble knights from the River Bay and the Stormland. The total number of troops reached 100,000. It was prepared to compete for the Iron Throne. The elimination of Lannister was only a secondary goal when Leonor took over everything about Renly. The army's combat goals were readjusted and began to focus on eliminating the Lannister family in the west. As one of the supreme commanders of this army, Mess Tyrell had no urgency to attack the west, but this situation changed after continuing the covenant with Lyanna. When Leonor accepted everything about Renly and entered into an alliance with the River Bay, he proposed to be crowned and married Margaret Tyrell in Rock City, while he fought against Stannis when the Wind Bowl defeated him. The princes of the Western Front offered rewards. Not to mention the noble knights of the Stormland. Even the inflatable fisherman was thinking about the wealthy Caen city. The inner commotion is only secondary, and the more important thing is that Cersei escaped. The Lannister family took the initiative to attack the Benlu city in Hegiandi. Most of the troops were deployed in the east, and northern troops were even moving south into the battlefield. Mess Tyrell thought he could take advantage of the situation, so he ordered an attack. According to Mess Tyrell's combat plan, the coalition forces in the Riverside and Stormland crossed the Monde River, headed north to Golden Avenue, and headed west along here. After breaking through the deep crypt city, you can go straight to Lannister's house. Caen City. As he rushed into Rock City, took off Tywin Lannister's head and let the world see if he was an inflatable fish. Mess Tyrell ate a big gap in the hilly areas of Deep Cry. The western frontier was already prepared for the time when Mess Tyrell had held a brutal bridge. Tywin Lannister sent his younger brother Kevan Lannister to take charge of the Deep Crypt. Tywin Lannister was famous for his song Casterm's Rainy Season. The princes of the west were very obedient to him. In addition, Leonor gave a reward to the princes of the west this time, which made the princes in the western border felt that they had no chance to surrender, so they were very obedient to the command of the Lannister family. The Lydon family in Deep Cave City, the Brax family in Cock Valley City, and the Shaliot family in Silver Mountain City under the organization of Kevan Lannister. These three major families led their troops to rely on the hills to launch a night attack on the coalition forces who came here from afar. The attack started a week ago at night, and Mess Tyrell himself was captured by Lynce Lydon, Count of Deep Crystal City. In the chaos, the coalition lost its supreme commander and then collapsed. If Lando Tali had not found Loras in time, the two of them would gather their troops to defend, build the camp again, and wait for Leonor's support. Have the troops in the western frontier attacked you during your defense? Lyanna asked about the movements in the western frontier. No, they seem to have had an internal strife. Lando Tali, who had a gray beard and a tough face, sighed deeply, with both luck and a pity. Luckily was that they had a buffering opportunity and were not beaten by the Western army in one breath. They were dispersed, but unfortunately they could not take advantage of this opportunity to launch a counterattack. Internal strife. Leonor was a little confused. It should be snatching the spoils, Lando explained to Lyanna. Okay, Leonor understood that the Western army was also a combination of knights and vassals. It scattered when it was against the wind, and when it was against the wind, it would fight to grab the spoils. This is a characteristic of the times. Have you ever met Oberyn of Dorne? After Leonor asked the whole story of the battle, he silently considered the situation in his mind, and asked Lando and Lolas about the whereabouts of the Dornies. Faced with Leonor's inquiry, Lolas frowned, while Lando showed a surprised look and said, Red Viper, it was him. I invited the Dornies to join the siege of the west, and they agreed. Oberyn took his Sand Snake group to King's Landing by boat, from the Golden Avenue. Counting the time, he didn't meet with you. Lando shook his head and responded to Leonor's question. The Sand Snake group led by Oberyn did not join the coalition forces in the river and Stormland, and they didn't know where they went. When Leonor learned that Oberyn had not joined the coalition forces, he was confused, but he could not think so much. Seeing that Lolas' face was gloomy, he spoke to Lando. Master Lando, please gather the knights and let them not be defeated by the failure in front of you. You should be excited in time. Yes. Lando glanced at the gloomy Loras, knowing that the future king probably had something to say to his brother-in-law, so he said goodbye and left after Leonor sent the Blue Road away. He turned to find a wine pot and a cup from the camp, poured Loras a glass of wine, and said, "Go to find someone who can trust and negotiate with Tywin Lannister." Loras, who took the wineglass, looked a little suspicious. It was common for the nobles to be captured and redeemed, but what would they use to exchange for their father this time? "James Lannister is in my hands. As long as Tywin promises to release the captives, I am willing to exchange it. I don't want my future queen to cry." Leonor's words made Lola's face look hopeful. Look. Chapter 58 Landeo Tally. Leonor talked to Loras for a while, and when he left the camp again, he saw that the knights were no longer as low as they were when they first met. They all smiled and saw that he bowed and bowed and bowed. Landeo Tally comforted everyone in just a while. Leonor was a little surprised and saw that the Count Jialing, who had gray hair and thin and capable face, was walking towards him with a young man with a look similar to him. "Your Majesty." Landeo Tally saluted Leonor first. "Master Landeo, your work has been done quite beautifully." Leonor turned around and lifted the curtain of the tent behind Landeo. Landeo looked up at Leonor, who took the initiative to lift the curtain for him, and was a little surprised. After a slight pause, he regained his calmness. When he walked past Leonor, he pointed at the young man behind him and said, "Your Majesty, this is my child, Dickon Tully. Can he be honored to serve you?" Leonor waved, letting Dickon follow his father to enter the account, and then he put down the curtain himself, followed in with a smile and asked the young Tally, "Would you like to serve me?" The young Dickon Tally was slightly stagnant when he heard this, and then knelt directly, "In the name of Heavenly Father, I wish to be loyal to you and serve you for life." "Then you should be a flag bearer by my side first." Seeing that Dickon was so decisive, Leonor waved his hand directly and let the young man stand beside him. Seeing his son standing next to Leonor successfully, Landeo Tally's face also relaxed, and he stroked Leonor's chest and said, "Your Majesty, as you ask. I revive the confidence of the knights with some words, and make them believe that you have brought more than 50,000 troops, and we will soon launch a new attack on Lannister to wash away this shame." Mr. Lan, how do you know that I brought an army of 50,000? Leonor made himself look surprised. Landeo Tally's expression was slightly stagnant. He looked up at Leonor's serious expression that was not as fake. He was a little skeptical, but his face was serious. "That's great. So we have enough strength to fight back against the guys of Lannister," Landeo said, even swinging his right fist, as if he was hitting Tywin Lannister under his fist. "But now I need to understand the situation of the enemy opposite, and how many knights are there in our coalition." Leonor spread his hand slightly, and he led the army back to the army. "The key point on the battlefield lies in the knights. Leave this matter to me." "Your Majesty," Landeo volunteered, "thank you for sharing my sorrow, Lord Landeo." Leonor showed a satisfied smile on his face. Although it was full of aristocratic speculation, he had many real talents and practical work. Landeo's status is not as good as Lola's, but in terms of ability, he throws out the scabbard several streets, and soon clears the power that the coalition forces can still mobilize. For Leonor, before the coalition forces in the river and Stormland were attacked at night, they were known as a 100,000 army. In fact, the total strength was between 80,000 and 90,000, including more than 5,800 knights and more than 3,000 horsemen. The remaining 60,000 to 70,000 are infantrymen, responsible for logistics handling matters. Kevin Lannister organized a night attack and captured Mess Tyrael alive, causing the coalition to collapse on its entire line. Then, Lando Tally and Lolas Tyrael joined forces to regroup, and only 60,000 to 70,000 infantrymen remained at 4,000 or 5,000. More than 8,000 knights in attendance were beaten to only half. Leonor brought 1,000 infantry and 400 knights, and gathered more than 400 knights along the way. The two sides joined forces, and there were still more than 4,700 knights in attendance, and 6,000 infantrymen. The total number of people is over 10,000. After losing 7 or 8 out of 100,000 troops, Leonor had a new understanding of the future father-in-law's dish, and after obtaining the information collected by Varys, he had a new understanding of the inflatable fish's dish in the opposite city of Shenju. There were many western troops including Yinchenhal and Jiaogu City. The total strength was more than 1,000 knights and more than 2,000 horse attendants, and the number of infantry soldiers was unclear. The inflatable fish has an army of nearly 100,000 in its hands, and was defeated by an opponent of less than 5,000 people, and it was the kind of defeat that collapsed across the board. "This guy, how can I turn the tables?" Leonor fell into trouble. Now there is no point in discussing the ability of inflatable fish, and what he needs to think about is how to gain advantages and victory in the new situation. According to Varys' intelligence, the Western army on the opposite side is still in terms of quantity, but such a quantity is meaningless, because Kevin Lannister has restrained the Western army and entered the stage of defense of the city. If we go again, if you fight, you can only engage in a siege. There is no way to fight this. Among the existing types of battles, siege is definitely the most difficult battle, no doubt about it. The Tyrion family had a military advantage of more than 10 times the strength, and had coordinated sea and land combat, but they had not yet captured the Fengxi fort. Although the Deep Grottor today is not as strong as the Fengxi fort, there are Silver Mountain Hall and Jaya City next to it. There are many hills in the west, and the Deep Cave City is located at the main road leading to Caen City on the Golden Avenue. To the north is the Corner Valley City of the Brax family, and to the south is the Silver Mountain Hall of the Shallot family. The three western cities are all firm in their positions. If Leonor rashly launches one of the three cities, his back and flanks will definitely be attacked by the other two cities, and he will be attacked from both sides. Leonor did not expect that he encountered such a difficult situation when he first started fighting. He couldn't help but grab his hair and called Landeo Tally to ask if there was any countermeasure. Your Majesty, in this situation, we don't need to fight here. Landeo sighed at the situation and advised Leonor to give up fighting in Deep Crypt City. How to say it? Leonor did not refute or scold, and asked Landeo what he meant. We can try to lead the army around the Deep Grotto City and go straight to Caen City. As long as we fight under Caen City, we will inevitably shake the army in the western frontier. At that time, whether it is to create a chance for Higiendi to break through the western frontier defense, or it is okay to try to dismantle the will of the nobles in the west. Landeo gave the solution in his heart. After hearing Landeo's suggestions, Leonor's eyes lit up. Yes. Why do you have to think about sieging the city? Landeo's suggestion deviated from his original intention of the war planning for the western frontier, and was very risky and radical. Once he could not conquer Caen City and his back road was cut off, he really said that he was unresponsive to Shianchan and said that the earth was not effective. Landeo's suggestions are not advisable, but his ideas are eye-opening. Master Landeo, your idea is very pioneering, and I also have an idea. Would you like to listen? Leonor had a new idea in his mind and tried to consult Landeo's opinions. Please say it. Landeo was flattered again. I will not forgive any nobles in the western frontier. Leonor first expressed his attitude. His war plan for the western frontier was to completely reject the aristocratic system here. There must be no compromise at all. No matter how difficult it is, it must be done. Once he compromised with the western frontier, his oath and promise in Fengxi Castle became empty talk, which would cause political dishonest to the nobles who participated in the war, because he could not take out the extra land in his hand to reward the victorious noble knights. The noble knights are not really loyal ministers and filial sons. If they cannot feed them, their Iron Throne will definitely not sit long. I want to attack Deep Acute Point City, but I can't think of how to capture the city in the middle of Jaya City and Silver Mountain Hall. Siege is difficult, but what if it's a field battle? Leonor's words made Landeo fall into deep thought. Chapter 59, Replacement of Prisoners. I have to fight to the end with the western frontier, and to the end with the western frontier army in Shenju City. Can this be done? Landeo's brows were frowning deeply. He looked up at Leonor in front of him. He saw that the future king's blue eyes were full of seriousness. He thought for a moment, so he asked, Your Majesty, Kevin Lannister is different from his brother. This is because the Western army refused to respond, but just defended the city. This is indeed a difficult point. If this is the case, we will bypass the Deep Crypt. I think that Lord Kevin should not miss such a good opportunity. Leonor expressed his plans. Landeo's plan to go deep into the western region is not good, but his idea of bypassing the Deep Crypt City gave Leonor the inspiration. As long as his army sets off, Kevin and Deep Crypt City will definitely not let this go. The opportunity is to protect Caen City from attacking, and to be able to sneak attack Leonor's army. If this is the case, then I have a request. Landeo heard Leonor's words and thought a little. He also felt that it was a bit risky to propose to go deep into the western region just now, but if so, it would be a good opportunity. You can say something directly, and you don't have to ask for my opinion. This is why you are an excellent military advisor. Leonor asked Landeo to say something directly. Please give me a chance to wash away the shame and let me and the Knights of Jia Erling walk at the end. Landeo's eyes were firm. If the army bypasses the Shenju City, then those who walk at the end will inevitably be attacked by the Western army in the Shenju city. Yes, I will be with you. Leonor agreed to Landao's request. If the army is attacked during the marching, then the marching is likely to turn into defeat, especially in this situation. There must be a suitable general. It is perfect for Landao to take the initiative to volunteer. There is one more thing. Landao couldn't help but feel relieved when he heard Leonor agreeing to cut off the guard, but he was a little worried. He and Leonor discussed it well, but everything was just a plan. You mean the case of Lord Mess being captured? I have figured out a solution and asked Loras to find someone to deal with it. There will be a reply soon. Leonor knew what Landao was worried about. Landao hesitated. When he captured Lord Mesterial in the western region, he would definitely make a big fuss with this, and even coerce the coalition forces of the princes in the Huan land to withdraw from the war. This matter can be solved smoothly. Don't worry, there is a high probability that the western frontier will agree, Leonor comforted Lan. He had James Lannister in his hand. If the Lannister family could take the lead, he would definitely agree to replace prisoners. The exchange of prisoners is a secret matter. Leonor did not say too much to Landao, and Landao rationally did not ask questions, but just waited silently for the results. Soon, the negotiation results of Loras came out. The western frontier agreed to replace prisoners and exchange Mesterial for James Lannister, because everyone understood that without James Lannister, the future of Caer Rock City and the western frontier could only be inherited by dwarfs or crazy women. Most people cannot accept this result. The process of replacing prisoners was also carried out in secret. Leonor asked someone to bring James from King's Landing and hand him over to Loras. Loras took advantage of the early morning to leave the camp with James and a team of loyal knights. When the sun came back, he brought back a fat middle-aged man with a beard and bulging belly. He was from Huan. Mesterial, Duke of the High Court. It is not a rare thing for nobles to be captured and redeemed, but it is not a glorious thing either. After Mesterial was successfully brought back from the enemy city, she did not stay in the camp for a long time. She led a team of people back to the High Court, but fortunately, Loras and the knights in the River Bay remained. Loras assured Leonor on behalf of his father that the Terriers would continue this covenant and wash away the shame of being captured. This time Leonor successfully redeems Mesterial, avoiding his worries, and immediately began to continue the battle with the western frontier. He began to issue orders overnight, requiring the entire army to immediately bypass Shenju City and continue to go to Caen City along the Golden Avenue. The army explored the way with knights from the Storm and River Bay lands. The 300 knights from Jialing and 1,000 infantrymen under Leonor cut off the rear and guarded the tail. As Leonor expected, Kevin Lannister, in Deep Cave City, immediately sent knights to harass him after seeing the coalition forces choose to detour. They dared not allow the coalition forces to attack Caen City. Faced with those small groups of harassing knights, Landao stopped in place with Leonor's elite infantry, and was arranged in a square formation of 3 by 3, with the 300 knives covering the flanks and covering the storm behind him. The knights from the land and river bays advanced towards Caen City. The western army in Shenju City was very patient and harassed for 3 days. It was not until the vanguard of the coalition forces left 30 Liga before it began to launch a large-scale attack from the city. Looking down from the sky, at the west gate of the Deep Cave City on the Golden Avenue, rows of knights ran out, bringing up a row of yellow dust and rushing towards the coalition forces along the Golden Avenue outside the west gate of Shenju City and among the hills. Leonor also responded, withdrew the original square formation and took out the carriage that transported food weapons, relying on the way of the rear of the carriage to the outside and the archers to cover it. The hills set up a car array. The smoke and dust raised by the western knights soon came to Leonor's car formation. It seems that something is wrong. Landao and Leonor stood on the high slope protected by the chariot formation, looking at the oncoming western army coming down the slope, and keenly capturing the abnormality of the army opposite. The western army rushed out of the deep crypto city did not attack the western lion's roaring flag, but a green flag with a stag with a crown on it, followed by the red-bottomed lion's roaring flag. It is the flag of other families in the west, such as the brown and green-white badger flag of the Leiden family in the Deep Hole City, the silver-bottomed purple unicorn of the Brax family in the Carl Valley City, and the open-screen peacock flag of the Shaliot family in the Silver Mountain City. Don't doubt it was Tywin's trick. They probably beat our family's flag in the name of Joffrey. Leonor explained to Lan that the Western Frontier Army on the opposite side had the crowned stag flag, which was basically based on it shows the great power and wants to shake the coalition forces politically. This kind of trick is really a despicable thing, Landeo quickly rebuked. Haha. Leonor smiled and glanced at the Count of Giantling who was showing his position, and explained to him, if Lannister bears this wave of attack, they can use this operation to obtain the Stormland and the Riverland. The heart of the nobles, after all, the nobles would not care whether the person who raised the flag was really Baratheon. This includes the Tyrion family in the River Bay. Once the wind is wrong, they can still marry Margaret Tyrion to Joffrey, so she will still be the queen, but a real knight will not ignore justice. Landeo did not dare to relax, saying that the Tully family would support justice and support Baratheon, who has real blood. Lord Landeo, the Tully family is all just and brave knights, but some people are not. Leonor smiled and stretched out his fist and tapped Landeo's shoulder, telling him not to be too careful. That's not to say you. Chapter 60 Confrontation. Landeo forced a smile. He didn't know what Leonor meant to say these words to him, so it was hard not to think of going somewhere else. Leonor didn't care about Landeo's words and continued to watch the battle down the slope. His chariot formation was very tight. When the Western Knights discovered this feature, they immediately began to stagnate the team, then began to dismount, pick up the shield, sword and battle axe, prepare to fight on foot. The knights are not fools. They have received years of training. They can not only charge and shoot on horseback, but also use various weapons including axes, spears, and shields when dismounting the horse. They can be said to be good at both infantry and cavalry. By comparison, Lyanno's infantry didn't know much. Most of them learned to stand in line, and then mainly fight with bows and arrows and spears. Hanging the sword is just a precaution. After the walking Western Knights approached the range, the infantry began to shoot their bows and arrows while the sound of arrows was densely integrated. Even with the shields, the pressure from the knights was huge. Some fell under the rain of arrows, while others were defeated with the shields nailed with arrows. After the Western Knights withdrew from the range, the officers immediately shouted, "Stop shooting," and the rain of arrows in front of the two armies stopped immediately. "Your Majesty, your army is the most exquisite and disciplined army I have ever seen, no doubt about it." Landeo sincerely praised Leonor, but lacks aggressiveness. Lyanno looked at the retreating Western Knights in the distance and shook his head slightly. There were only 200 or 300 Western Knights who attacked just now, and more Western Knights were still riding horses to guard the distance under such circumstances. Once his infantry formation launches a counterattack, the formation will not be maintained. At that time, just one charge on the opponent can defeat him. To sum up, infantry has enough defense but insufficient progress. The Knights of the Giantling are willing to attack as your sword, Landeo asked without hesitation. If the infantry can fight, then their knights can be discharged and wait for death. It's not time for you to attack, my count. Leonor sat on the horse, laughing and letting Landeo relieve himself. Soon, the Western army in the distance launched a second round of attack. This time they sent more than 10 times the infantry, but they were no longer knights in infantry battles, but ordinary infantry with only simple leather armor. They held simple. The wooden sign launched an attack in spaced scattered formations, while all the knights rode horses to guard the rear of the infantry, waiting for the opportunity to launch a charge. "Your Majesty, the enemy is planning to deceive our arrows." Landeo saw through the enemy's intention at a glance, used ordinary infantry to deceive the arrows, and then launched a charge after the arrows were exhausted. The people in the western region were really despicable. Let them die. Pass the order and let the enemy close to you and shoot arrows. If you fight to the death, Lord Landeo, can you rush forward at this time? Leonor asked Landeo, taking advantage of the situation. When the infantry in the western front counterattack was launched, it was the best time to fight. "Use me as the edge." Landeo only replied with one sentence. "This is the motto of the Tully family, as a storm, go sweeping the enemy. The warriors are with you, and the 7 gods are with you." Leonor sat on the horse, tapped Landeo 7 times with his right hand, and sent his blessings on behalf of the 7 gods. Landeo's breathing became heavy. After nodding to Leonor solemnly, he pulled away. Soon, the neighing came from the slope. 300 Giantling knights began to go downhill and entered the car formation ready to go under the hillside. The battle continued. The Western Knights were behind and ordinary infantry were in front of him and began to carefully enter the range of Leonor's chariot formation. Lyanno overestimated the fighting spirit of the infantry in the west. After the infantry entered the range, they began to surround them. It was not until the knights behind them drove away, and the number of their own people was large, and there were no archers on the opposite side. Go forward with courage. When the enemy entered a 50-step range, the officers issued an order. The rain of arrows in front of the chariot suddenly became dense. With just 2 rounds of arrows, the infantry in the western front began to defeat the back, but the knights in the western front did not allow it. The fully armed knights slashed their horses and swung their swords, slashed the retreating infantry, and drove them back to the battlefield to consume the coalition's arrows. Those poor western infantry were like this, being slashed by their own knights and betrayed by their opponents' bows and arrows, and squeezed into the middle of the battlefield. Some people cried loudly and some begged loudly, "Start a counterattack." Leonor saw this and immediately ordered. Seeing this, Dickon Tally next to him quickly waved the red flag in his hand down the slope. As the red flag was waving, the officer at the foot of the mountain saw the signal and quickly ordered the firing to stop. While the infantry pulled away the crowded carriage, the bow and arrow above the head stopped, and there was a gap in the enemy's vehicle formation in the distance. Before the infantry in the western border could breathe a sigh of relief, they felt suffocated because a large group of cavalry rushed out in the gap opened by the enemy formation in the distance. The cavalry were wearing a green flag, with a red star hunter painted on it, and he was about to shoot with a bow and arrow. The blue Tally, who was under his command, took the lead, held his sword high, shouted, and the 300 horned knights behind him immediately following. Shouts came one after another, and rushed towards the almost collapsed western infantry. The western infantry, who were trapped in the formation just now, could no longer withstand this posture. Everyone collapsed under the charge of the Gyerling knights and began to turn around and flee. In this way, the Gyerling knights drove the collapsed western infantry and began to retaliate against the western knights. The collapsed western infantry did not have the courage to counterattack the enemy, but when facing the knights supervising the battle on the way to escape, they did not hesitate to stab with their spears, cut with a sword, hit with a shield, and kill all those who blocked the way, kill the gods and the Buddhas. Leonor stood on the hillside on a horse, watching the defeated soldiers in the western frontier who were swept by the Gyerling knights to retaliate against his position, and was also stunned. The army in the western frontier was also caught off guard by this situation. By the time we wanted to stop it, we had forgotten that our military formation had been shaken, and all the flags, including the green-crowned stag flag, began to sway backwards. "Give me the flag." Leonor looked at the posture on the hillside, no longer hesitated. He took Baratheon's crowned stag flag from Arad, and then rode down the mountain with the flag, rushing down the mountain with his horse. On the hillside, Arad, Brienne, Dickon, etc., who were staying by Leonor saw this and stayed for 4 or 5 seconds before coming back to their senses. They all urged their horses to follow His Majesty the King and surrounded the King's flag to go east. The yellow-crowned stag flag floated down the hillside, and the entire army under the slope was in agitation. Immediately after the next second, only more than 1,000 infantry soldiers began to launch a counterattack, following the yellow-crowned flag, and shouting to the east. The western frontier army began to collapse further. Chapter 61, Kill the Flag and Seize the City. Within the military formation in the western border, Landeo Tally took the lead, rushed to the green-crowned stag, and killed the flag holding the flag with one sword, causing the flag in his hand to fall. The green king flag fell, and before Blue Tally could breathe a sigh of relief, he raised his mind again, because even the battlefield in front of him was a mess, such as the brown, green, white badger flag of the Leiden family, and Brack, the city of Cock Valley, the purple unicorn of the Sea family, and the open-screen peacock flag of the Chaliot family in the Silver Mountain City. These flags began to sway and retreat eastward, but there were still several flags firmly in front of them. The Lannister family's lion roaring flag and a yellow-bottomed three-dog flag floated on the battlefield. Under the flag, a large knight wearing a barrel-shaped helmet and armored slammed a horse with a gun and a horse, leading his army to rush towards Landeo Tally. Landeo looked at the burly knight and recognized the other party's identity at a glance. Greg Clicken, the Magic Mountain in Clicken Ford in the western region, charged at himself. He could be his opponent at this age. Is it? Can't retreat a little, huh? Landeo yelled lightly, holding his sword to activate the war horse, but when he rushed, he heard a roar sounding from the side, followed by a cavalry in yellow-clothed turban coming out from the side, and he caught the attack from Demon Mountain himself. Well, as soon as this yellow cavalry appeared, he shot arrows with his short-horn bow before receiving the enemy. A thin layer of arrows grew on the body of Demon Mountain. In a blink of an eye, Landeo looked at it with a question mark, and then stopped carefully. The army in front of him did not have a flag, but their outfit was very tarnished. They were wearing simple composite armor, wrapped in yellow headscarf, and rode Dornish horses. The horse is small but very flexible and endurance. After the yellow-clothed Dorn cavalry shot a round of arrow rain, the team of Demon Mountain was at least half of them. Demon Mountain himself carried the arrow rain with his thick armor, but the black warhorse under his crotch was not that lucky. The man stood up in the neighing sound, lifted his master off the horse, and was shot to death by arrows. The Demon Mountain, like an arrow pig, fell down from its horse, let out and roar, threw away the knight's big gun, pulled out a big sword covered with dense patterns from its waist, turned around to face a yellow knight, moved flexibly to the left side of the horse, avoid the spear that the horse knight was stuck under his right armpit, and then use a sword to directly cut off the opponent's mount's front foot. The deadly knight on the horse's back leaned forward and fell off the horse. Further, a woman's scream rushed out in the battle formation, and another yellow knight rushed out with a spear to rescue the yellow knight who fell from the horse's back. Go away, Demon Mountain roared, raised the big sword in his hand, cut off the yellow knight's spear, and tried to get closer to the killer again, but the opponent skillfully pulled the horse away. The battlefield was originally separated by the Yellow Knights and the Demon Mountain team, but as the Demon Mountain was trapped by the Yellow Knights, Kevin, who was wearing plate armor under the lion roared, saw this and quickly directed the family knights to rescue, and Landeo, a subsidiary of the steady hunter, did not hesitate to urge him to ride on the horse no matter where these Darnest emerged. As long as they attack Lannister, they will be allies and they must not be annihilated. The two sides were in a melee again. Leonor led the infantry to follow him at this time. Looking at the chaotic battlefield, he immediately commanded the infantry to form a formation and poured arrow rain towards the lions roaring in the distance. Leonor held a large red and white bow in the chaos, took out a three-edged arrow like a short spear, aimed at Kevin, who was under the lion's flag dozens of steps away, and directly blazed the full moon with a sound of strings. The elderly veteran trembled under the lion's flag dozens of steps away, and the plate armor on his chest was pierced by a heavy arrow, and a mouthful of blood was sprayed out, and then slowly fell down from the back of the horse. In the chaos, the Count of Jailing Landeo took the lead again. Taking advantage of the death of Kevin, he knocked away two Western knights, rushed to the lion's roar, and cut off the flagpole with one sword. With the red lion flag falling, Lannister's army could no longer hold on, and its morale collapsed in the end. Not to mention ordinary soldiers, even the knights began to pull out their horses and escape. Leonor shot Kevin down with a heavy arrow and held up the big red and white bow in his hand and commanded the army to continue pursuing the fleeing Western army. Chasing the Western army into the Deep Crypt City. In the Deep Cave City, the Lyden family, who were emblematic of the brown, green and white badger flag, saw that there was no hope of surrender, so they could only lead their troops to defend a main tower and resist to the death. Street fighting is even more tragic than field fighting. Leonor did not want to hurt 1,000 enemies and suffered 800 of them, so he ordered the Western Knights to surrender, but the premise was that the Western Knights would take out the head of a Western noble as a letter of surrender. With Leonor's promise, the knights in the Deep Cave City rebelled one after another. The Lyden family became the first family to be destroyed in the Western War. The men, women, young and old families, together with their relatives, were killed without losing their lives, and all of them became inside the city. The knight's letter of confession: if this is not the case, the knights will die together. The battle was much smoother than I thought. Leonor didn't even have time to let the coalition vanguard behind him turn around, and completely captured the Deep Crypt with a small amount of troops. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart, I'm not mature yet. The reason why he was able to win was because Westeros's war command system was not mature, and soldiers and knights belonged to different families. The generals of the war relied on bloodline and courage, rather than command ability, did not pay attention to discipline and tactics, and had no any organization can speak of. Although the combat system is immature, if you win, you will win. In the main tower of Deep Crypto City, Leonor sat in the main position and began to summarize the war. After the war, he rewarded all parties to join the army, and recorded the collective merits of his direct infantry under his command once, each of whom rewarded a golden dragon. Landeo Talai was the main general, led the army to charge, and earned a merit in the individual's flag and rewarded 300 households with fiefs. As for the 300 knights in Jailing, that was the Talai family's own business. In addition to the fighting coalition forces, Leonor also pardoned the knights who had committed a petition and asked them to make another contribution to conquer Jaiolgu City, Yinshan City and other cities in the western border for the coalition forces. His pardon order and declaration are still valid for other Western knights. Western knights can be pardoned by taking out the head of a Western nobleman. After killing the Viscount, they can get the title of Viscount and territory. When killing the Earl, they can get the title of Earl and territory. There is no false deception under his effective military order. Geauga City and Yinchin City in the west quickly fell, and the Brax family, Shaliot family, and the Farai family all became the condemnation of the Western Knights. A large number of Western Knights changed their flags and entered Leonor's command. Among them, Abel Calaxy, the Knight of Deep Cave City, was named the new Silver by Leonor by killing Hilt Shalit, the Earl of Silver Mountain City. The Earl of Shansheng, the territory of Yinchin City, belonged to the royal family's direct jurisdiction, which attracted the attention of other Western Knights and began to attack the territory of other Western nobles. A large number of Western-bound noble territories were captured, and a large number of Western-bound knights were sealed. The northern front of Caen City collapsed completely, and Leonor's troops further expanded, and the troops began to approach Lannister Lane. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62: The Tally Family. In the afternoon, dragging his tired body out of the castle gate, Dickon turned his head and looked at the main castle behind him that once belonged to the Leiden family. It seemed like a different life. When he shook his head and woke up, he looked at the city that had just been washed away by blood. Feel confused about where you should go next, Mr. Dickon? A shout came from behind. Dickon turned his head and saw a young man with black hair and brown eyes and light armor running out. Mr. Aurad. Dickon nodded to the young man. Your Majesty asked me to tell you that your father is now stationed in the east of the city. You can go there to find him. Remember to come back in 3 days. Aurad conveyed Leonor's notice. Okay. Dickon was shocked when he heard this and found a place to go. It has been 3 days since he entered the deep crypt. In the past 3 days, Dickon Tally, as the flag bearer, has been following Leonor to help him handle various documents. It was not until today that he was ordered to take a leave. Didn't know how he came here in the past 3 days. One letter after another was sent to him from all directions, and he took apart and watched it. He picked up important news and reported it over and over again. Even though he was strictly required to train by his father since childhood, the past 3 days still made Dickon Tally feel a deep sense of powerlessness. After receiving Arad's advice, he bowed his head without even saying thanks. He hurried towards the east of the city. In the east of the city, Dickon leaned against the soldiers in the city and successfully found his father's temporary residence here, inside the house of a merchant. Father, Dickon found his father, Earl Landale, and saw that his father changed into a cloth outfit, which was rare for his father who had always believed in iron-bloodedism. How is it? Landale glanced at his son who returned home and asked in the first place, what? Ah. Is it your Majesty? Dickon subconsciously replied. When he looked up and saw his father's frowning brow, he suddenly felt nervous, stood attentive, and replied in a soldier's posture, Your Majesty is a very important person who cares about communication and asks his men to write important matters into letters to report them. You have been dealing with these letters. Landale's frowning brows just relaxed when he saw his son's straight look. Yes, Dickon nodded, it's very good. It's helpful to let you learn from Master Elaine. Learn the knowledge. Landale nodded with satisfaction, happy that his education for his children came in handy, and couldn't wait. What letters have you read these days? Whose are they? What is the content? Can you tell the content of those letters, Father? Don't you know? Dickon was a little surprised. I have been stationed here these days and have not received any news from the outside world. I only know that His Majesty has issued some announcements in the city and accepted the surrender of some Western Knights. This is a reasonable approach. If this is not the case, we will fall into a very serious situation. A difficult situation. Landale said what he knew, so that's the case. Your Majesty did it. He asked the surrendered Western Knights to have to offer the heads of a Western noble. It was a bit cruel. Dickon expressed his opinion. Cruel? In my opinion, this is the greatest kindness. The kindness towards the enemy will initially turn into cruelty towards oneself. Only in this way can we pacify the western frontier as quickly as possible. Landale scolded Dickon for his meaningless kindness. Once all the western regions are killed, the western regions will resist and die, and more people will be killed. I understand this, but I think it is better to treat a nobleman than to be killed in battle. Dickon said it later, and it was a little difficult to say. He felt that the orders of His Majesty the King were tantamount to inciting knights to murder the nobleman. Haha, it's better to be killed by a group of lowly people? What is noble and what is lowly? Don't learn from your stupid brother, he will only enjoy the romance, while you will only be brave and fierce. You must treat knowledge and strength correctly, and use these to improve one's cognition and vision, change oneself, and don't indulge in a certain environment. Landale felt that Dickon had become weak. He paid too much attention to his courage and martial arts in the past, and neglected him to recognize it. Teaching on knowledge, yes, Dickon could only nod in the face of his strong father. Okay, don't tell me the letters you deal with. Your Majesty will focus on cultivating you for my sake. You must be grateful and not disclose the letters you see to others to avoid leaking secrets. Do you understand? Landao's earnest lesson. Yes, Dickon nodded quickly. Let your heart be careful and be a brave person. This is not to make you brave and fierce, but to learn to accept everything and play your role in these things. The future of the Tally family is in you. Yes, father, I will definitely serve your Majesty as much as I can. Dickon nodded again. Then tell me, what are your hobbies? Your Majesty's hobby. Dickon's eyes were straight. He had been following the king for the past few days, and he had not seen anything interested in it. Other nobles would always look for women after completing their conquest. Or drink, or eat a lot, but he doesn't seem to have these needs. He always gives orders to count the land, population, manor and knights here, and asks the knights to complete the occupation and killing of a certain place. Leave the nobles. So, you haven't relaxed your heart yet? Landale rolled his eyes. Father, I will be attentive in the future. Dickon did not dare to refute, and suddenly he thought, Father, I remembered it. His Majesty seems to be very interested in magic. Magic? Landale was shocked when he heard this. Yes, magic. Every time your Majesty rests, he always puts a very strange position, crosses his legs together, ties his hands in front of his lower abdomen, and then slowly falls asleep, as if he is doing a very strange ceremony. Dickon recalled every time Leonor rested. Okay, I understand. Landale nodded slightly when he heard this. He was a shallow believer of the seven gods and a fan of magic. He once asked a warlock to use magic tricks to solve some problems, but all failed, but it did not prevent him from doing so. Still believe in magic, you must pay close attention to your Majesty's hobbies and needs in the future. That is the direction you can work hard and the way you can make the Tally family more prosperous. Landale asked his son. Yes, father, do we want to recommend some sorcerers for your Majesty? Dickon tried to ask. That's a stupid approach. Flattering the monarch like this will only make the monarch feel that his privacy has been discovered. You have to learn to use your brain. Landale had a headache. Why did Dickon so stupid? What should I do? Dickon was also furious. Idiot, go and contact your colleagues around you first, and then tell them about our Tally family's ancestors, Hunter Halling and Horn Halidong. Landale had no choice but to teach Dickon how to use it in person. The method of meeting the monarch's preferences. Chapter 63 The Miserable Situation of the Demon Mountain. Just as Landale Tally taught his son in person and taught him how to meet the monarch's preferences, Leonor put down his complicated government affairs and took Brienne and other guards out of the castle. Go to Camp Dorne in the west of the city. In the Camp of Dorne, soldiers of the Sand Snake Order wrapped in yellow turban put Leonor into the camp and notified Oberon, who was stationed, that Prince Dorne, nicknamed Red Viper, came out to greet him personally. Welcome, welcome, my most noble king. Oberon spread his wings and even hugged Leonor. My Highness, how are you injured? Leonor hugged Oberon, feeling that in addition to the strong smell of spice, there was also a strong smell of blood on his body. Okay, it can't be better. It would be even better if you can leave Tywin to me for the same. Oberyn laughed. On the battlefield 3 days ago, the Sand Snake group led by Oberon appeared on the battlefield and fought against Lannister's army with Lando Tally. In the melee, Gregor Clegane was captured. This incident the Red Viper was very happy, so he welcomed Lyanna with an intimate attitude. That depends on your own ability. Gregor, did you kill? Lyanna smiled, did not agree or object, and asked about the situation in Demon Mountain. Of course, no, I want that guy to die immediately but not die. Oberon said the most gritty words with a smile. The Martell family, especially Oberon Martell, hated the Demon Mountain Gregor Clegane. He deserved it. Leonor only replied, and then relaxed Oberon's gritting expression. Haha, my Majesty, you are the most special Majesty I have ever seen. I like what you do to the nobles in the West, which is something I want to do but cannot. Oberon smiled and praised Leonor for asking for the western region. The letter of the knight submitted, now most of the western nobles live in terror. I feel very accomplished to make you happy by His Highness Oberon. Leonor smiled. Come on, Your Majesty, don't go around in circles with me, tell me. Oberon put away his smile. I'm really just here to see you in the Demon Mountain. I've had too many things in the past 3 days. Leonor smiled as usual, but in his heart, he felt that Oberon, a man born in the year of the dog, turned his back on his face and turned his back on him. Why don't you believe in books? Then do you want to see the Demon Mountain? Oberon saw Leonor's expression as usual, but he felt a little bit of evil. Of course, Leonor felt Oberon's interest. Was he going to stimulate himself with the tragic situation of Demon Mountain and treat himself as someone who has never seen the world? Then please come with me. Oberon waved. Oberon led Leonor and his guards into the camp, came to a tent, and brought him in. There was a strong smell of blood in the tent, and 3 Darn women were facing the demon hill. Grego Click tortures the entire man in Demon Mountain has been destroyed. His spine was broken by the Dornies and he has become a paralyte, but he has not died. He has been revived by the medicine and suffered a lot of torture. His eyes were plucked out and his tongue was cut off and the ears were filled with lead. It's really miserable, but Leonor ignored him directly. Who told the Demon Mountain to do nothing? He fell to death by Rhaega's 2 children and raped and killed Elia Mardell. The people of the Mardell family deserve it no matter how they treat him. How is it? Oberon asked Leonor how he felt, with a bloody magic mountain. Not really, Leonor replied without blinking. He turned his head and glanced in the tent, and saw a pile of armor and swords stained with blood, and his eyes suddenly moved. What are you looking at? A tall figure stopped in front of Leonor. Who are you? Leonor raised his gaze and looked at the woman in front of him. He saw that he had black skin, a strong figure, and was quite ugly, just like Brienne. Respect the king. Brienne's hoarse voice also came at the right time. The female knight pressed the hilt of the sword around her waist, but Leonor raised his hand and held it down. This is Abashad, my daughter. Oberon also explained the identity of the woman. Those are the weapons and armor of Demon Mountain. Leonor waved Brienne back, ignoring the fierce Abaya, but instead raised his chin to point at the pile of armor and swords in the tent. Yes, that sword is good. It's the Valyrian steel sword. Do you want it? Oberon asked. No, I just saw that sword looks familiar, and it felt like the ice of the Stark family. Leonor shook his head directly. If you want it, take it away. Oberon thought Leonor was looking for trouble, so he spoke with disdain. Leonor looked at Oberon, who turned against him again. His mouth twitched, but ignored him, went up and picked up the big sword, handed the wolf head at the hilt to Oberon. What do you think is this? Oberon glanced at the wolf head on the hilt of Valeria's steel sword, and his face changed slightly. He had been tortured by the Demon Mountain before, but he didn't notice that this big sword might be the coldness of the Stark family ice. What's this sword? Leonor glanced at the paralyzed Moshin and had no ability to speak. He didn't say the second half of the words. It's meaningless to ask this now. Moshin's tongue was cut and he couldn't speak anymore. You take this sword. Oberon was unwilling to get involved with Leonor, so he just asked him to take the sword and leave. Okay. Are you planning to torture him here for the rest of your life? Leonor saw Oberon driving the people, and stopped when he saw that he was ready, took Handbing away and asked at the same time, call us when I go to K Rock Fort. Oberon only said one sentence. Yes, well, sorry, I said this for my brother Robert. There was something wrong with his attitude back then, which is something that cannot be explained. Leonor apologized to Oberon before leaving. Although Robert did not participate in the Demon Mountain rape and killing Ilya, he later pardoned Demon Mountain and said inappropriate words. What do you mean by these words? Oberon was detonated by Leonor's words. It's nothing, it's also an attitude. Just think I'm scared by the appearance of the Demon Mountain, Leonor said as he glanced at the unhealthy Demon Mountain on the ground. He reasoned, and it looked nothing. If he imagined that he was tortured, he would be fine. It's me who hates chills. Quite a version. Roll, let's go. Leonor didn't care and asked Brienne and others to leave the tent. Father, this guy, the ugly Abaya came to Oberon. Kill him for me and throw the body to feed the dog. Oberon couldn't breathe his anger, and looked at the Demon Mountain on the ground, with an indescribable disgust. It was no longer interesting to torture such a guy. Yes, Abaya obeyed the order. Go and get Nami and Tarini again, and you and they will go to the main fort with me. Oberon became more and more angry the more he thought about it. Father, do you want towards that guy to send troops? Abaya tried to ask. No, I'll find you a job. Oberon decided to vent his anger. Chapter 64 Assassination Again. After leaving the Dorneys' sand snake camp, Leonor handed the greatsword ice in his hand to the king's guard Alex Oakard, and then spoke to Brienne. Brienne, you will ride back to the main fort first, and let the Minsk bachelor send a crow to the river city, and ask if Lord Ed Stark has been there. Yes. After Brienne received the order, she immediately activated her horse to move forward and return to the main fort to pass the order. Leonor watched Brienne ride away first, then glanced at the big sword in Alex's hand, and sighed helplessly. Brother Ed, I really helped you, brother. You have such a good character, but don't die. If Ed, a loyal fan of the Baratheon family, dies, it will be a lot more trouble for the Iron Throne to govern the northern border in the future. Leonor sighed in his heart that life and death were impermanent, and prayed with some luck, and took a dozen guards led by 2 Imperial guards to rush back to the main fort. As he walked, he suddenly heard a few whizzing sounds in his ears. Ring arrow. Leonor, who has been practicing bows and arrows for many years, is very sensitive to the coming sound and immediately rests his body on the horse's back, and the guards behind him are not so lucky. The pain was heard endlessly, and the royal guards Alex Oakard and Gloss Brown were shot in many places on their faces and throats, while other guards, people or horses were shot in many places. The horses neighed and retreated, and even stood up and lifted the guards above them in the chaos. The war horse under Leonor was shot into the eye with an arrow, and the pain was softened. He was also pushed off the horse. Finally, he waited until the arrow rain passed, and looked up and saw that the streets in front of him were all over the streets. Many figures appeared. All of these figures were strong men. They wore simple leather and wooden armor, threw away their longbows, drew out their long swords, and ran towards Leonor, who was being turned upside down by the horse. Come over. The roar suddenly broke out, and the blond and strong royal guard Alex Oakard stood up from the chaotic man with 3 branches on his face and 2 arrows on his throat. The white-clad emperor, who was wearing white armor, stood up from the chaotic horse. Lin Tui held a great sword handbang in one hand and his own steel sword in the other, and rushed towards the assassins. Leonor hid under the horse, heard Alex's charge roar, looked up at the big man Angzang rushing out, and his heart couldn't help but feel excited, but instead of pulling out a mace to help the battle, he took it off from the dead saddle. Bow and arrow. Directly draw the bow and hit the arrow. Take it. Assassinator's right eye was pierced by an arrow, and the seriously injured king's guard Alex Oakard's left sword was knocked out, but he held the greatsword ice in both hands and stabbed him with one sword. The man slashed his shoulders into 2 strangles, which shocked the other assassins. Leonor fired arrows repeatedly, cooperating with Alex Oakard to kill the assassin. The guards next to him reacted and pulled out the sword from his waist to help the battle. However, in the melee, the Imperial guards but Gloss Brown covered the arrow's throat and turned around and ran. The scene was too chaotic. Although Alex Oakard was brave and terrifying, he only had his last breath. After killing an assassin, he used up his strength and staggered 2 steps before going directly to the ground. Neil Leano saw a despicable assassin pierced his chest with a sword. He also shot the assassin to death, but there were 7 or 8 assassins left at the scene, and his guards were dead after just a while. Death, wounded, and fleeing. Looking around and seeing the miserable situation of the guards beside him, Leonor was not discouraged. With a casual move, the nail hammer on the back of the dead horse flew automatically. Just as he was about to fight the remaining assassins alone, he swished and swished. The sound of arrows flew over his head, scaring him down. Swoosh, arrows flew over the top of his head. Leonor looked up and saw that the assassin who had run near him had been shot down. He heard the sound of horse hooves and turned around and saw one. The agile yellow-dorn horse ran wildly before it, and was so fierce that it was tied up by the reins. My Majesty, you are in trouble. Oberon pulled the reins, controlled the horse under his crotch to Leonor, and joking around him twice, and on his side, 3 skilled people were unskilled. The Dorn warrior rode his horse to attack, and even further away, the Dorn warriors shot arrows to support him on the way. The 3 Dorn warriors who were in the front were Abea, who Leonor had seen. The black-skinned female sand snake waved her spear, poked down an assassin and knocked down another assassin. The other 2 tall and slender female Dunons waved their scimitars and cut down the ending assassins while striking the horse. Leave a few survivors. Leonor pressed the mace in his hand, and looked at the battle that was about to end in the field in an instant, and couldn't help but roar, "Stay alive!" Oberon also shouted. The 2 female donors holding scimitars heard the cry and quickly put away the scimitar in their hands. One female donors threw out a long whip and slapped a whip flower, and the whip tip wrapped around the right side of an assassin. The foot, dragged him to run around the ground with the war horse, and crushed several people. The other one sat on the horse, pulled out the flying knife from his clothes, threw it out directly, and nailed the 3 assassins who were trying to resist one by one fall. These 3 girls are so awesome. Leonor looked at the 3 female sand snakes who were attacking on the horse and couldn't help but scream in his heart until Oberon on the back of the horse beside him spoke to him. "How is it?" Oberon looked down at Leonor's surprised expression and asked with a corner of his mouth. "Awesome." Leonor expressed his feelings truthfully. "Your guard is not very good." Oberon glanced at the people with arrows on the ground and sighed with his lips. Leonor didn't say anything. He glanced at the guards on the ground and strode to the dead Alex Ockert. He looked at the half-kneeled royal guard, thinking about his usual quiet words. "His style is a little sad. There is another one. Burles Brown?" Leonor raised his head, remembered another royal guard, looked up and found his body, but instead the Dorne knights in the distance dragged their horses and dragged them away. Come here by someone while speaking. The Dorne knights in the distance had arrived, dragged back the royal guard Boros who was trying to escape, and threw the unlucky guy with an arrow in his throat to Leonor. Leonor realized that Bolas' escape was gone, and he no longer had any worries about him. He stepped forward and stepped on the gray-haired Imperial Guard and asked directly, "Do you know these assassins?" The gray-haired Bolas raised his face and did not dare to look at the young man in front of him. He coughed twice, and blood oozed out of his throat and corners of his mouth. "Do you want me to help? You don't seem to be good at interrogation." Oberon jumped off his horse and asked Leonor, "Help me." Leonor accepted Oberon's kindness. As for whether Boros would be as miserable as Demon Mountain, he had no need to pity this guy. "Are those going to be tried together?" Oberon pointed to the other assassins caught by his sand snake daughter. "Take a review together, but you will take it to the main castle of the city." Leonor nodded affirmatively. "No problem, I'm happy to serve the king." Oberon smiled. Chapter 65 New Guard. Oberon's illegitimate daughters of Sand Snake did have something torture. They took turns to interrogate Boros and the assassins, and then compared the interrogation content with different people in order to find out what they could not match. The local area tortures it in detail, and soon the truth was made. This group of assassins is not a killer group like the Faceless, but a knight who is loyal to the West. They tried to reverse the defeat in the West by killing Leono and have been monitoring Leono in the main for a long time. As for Bolas, this guy was the royal guard who relied on Cersei to enter. He did not betray Leonor, but he was not loyal to his duties, and simply escaped at the last minute. Leonor had just arranged the funeral for Ockert and other guards who died in order to protect themselves, and gave their families corresponding rewards. Hearing the truth found by Oberon, he couldn't help but shake his head and laugh. "You are not angry?" Oberon showed a strange expression. He was almost dead for life just now, but now he can still laugh. "Why are you angry?" The western frontier is like a beast gradually falling into a desperate situation. The more crazy the things they do, the more correct my attack steps are, Leonor explained to Oberon with a smile. Now, it was Oberon's turn to speak. "I have arranged for someone to investigate the Deep Mill City, and limit the Knights of Deep Mill City to hand over suspicious personnel within a specified period of time. Your Highness, your daughters will be responsible for the subsequent review operation. Is it okay?" Leonor now also I can't find any good torture officers, and I hope Oberon Sand Snakes will come and help again. Of course, they won't go back after the trial? Oberon showed a strange smile. Huh? Leonor showed a question mark. "My Majesty, I cannot rest assured that a nobleman like you has no reliable guard." Oberon spoke in a greasy tone. "So I decided to send my beloved Sand Snakes to you as a guard. How about it?" Oberon's previous words were very slick, which aroused Brienne next to him with displeasure, but when he heard the words behind him, the female knight turned her hopeful eyes to Leonor, hoping that His Majesty the King could refuse. "Those sand snakes are dangerous in themselves and are not suitable for being guards at all. If the sand snakes are willing, then stay." Leonor ignored Brienne's gaze. He really needed appropriate guards now, and the noble knights in the Stormland and River Bay were unreliable. Although the Martell family of Dorne is connected with Targaryen, they will not rebel without being sure of their personality. Even if they rebel, they will use Oberon to hold a grudge against his sister Ilya in N years. These illegitimate daughters are also very good hostages. Give yourself a few years to turn the beautiful ones into lovers and give birth to a few illegitimate children. Then see who as grandfather will help. Then let's just say that. I'll keep a Bea, Name and Tarini by your side. Oberon didn't know Leonor's idea, but just thought it was because he successfully inserted the stake into him. Around me, okay, Leonor accepted happily. Oberon left the 3 illegitimate daughters with Leonor, and successfully left. After successfully leaving the stake as soon as he left, Aurad hurriedly ran in and reported to Leonor, "Your Majesty, there are letters from the King's Landing city." "I didn't show it to anyone," he said as he handed the oiled paper roll in his hand to Leonor. The information level behind King's Landing was temporarily raised during the war, and no one else could read it except for a few people. When Leonor heard the news that it was King's Landing city, his heart immediately raised it, and quickly took the special oil paper roll and spread it out, and looked carefully. Just as Leonor launched the Battle of Deep Crypt, a rebellion broke out on the side of King's Landing city. Some merchants in King's Landing launched a rebellion. They called themselves Deer and Tenine people and cooperated with Stannis' fleet inside and outside. They wanted to open the mud gate on the north bank of the Blackwater River in King's Landing and let Stannis' army enter the city, but fortunately Old Barlistan discovered the rebellion in time and led his team to quell the rebellious merchants. Leonor couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he saw the content of Barlistan's successful defeat of the rebellion. What he feared most was that Stannis would be beheaded with black magic. As for playing cards like this now, there was no need to be afraid, but he was really anxious. It is difficult to predict whether Stannis will still care about Barlistan's reputation. Black magic. Leonor had a headache when he thought of the unreasonable external move. He had previously picked up a spell to make Valyria gang from Tobun Mott's mouth, and then asked the red-robed monk Sorasin directly for some magical spells. The key point, but the magic about this world is still confused, and there is no such thing as it is. How great would it be if I had drawn the Amitabha Sutra of the past or the Dark Record of Xuanzhan? Leonor couldn't help but sigh again that the Tao Sutra he drew from that bad system is just the basic knowledge of Taoism practice in the Yangshan world, and does not contain profound Taoism. If there are Amitabha Sutra and Xuanzhan, the supreme scriptures such as Dark Records, so how could he be afraid of the Shadow Killer? Just turn the god into Yasha. King Cha to death. The other party, give me paper and pen, I want to reply to Lord Barlistan. Leonor sighed, but the facts still need to be done with the paper and pens and papers obtained by Aurad. Leonor wrote a letter to Old Barlistan, first thanking him for his protection of King's Landing, and then repenting to him that he would do anything to the west for victory. Old Barlistan is a man who values knight morality and knight honors very much. Even if he doesn't like Robert, he still shows loyalty to Robert, just because he overcomes the way of knights. Therefore, Leonor believes that he is a knight in the west. The amnesty order may make him feel sad. After all, the amnesty order forced the Western Knights to kill the master in disguise and destroy the inherent morality of the knights, even if the knights themselves have no morality. In short, it was all a few pleasing words. After Leonor confessed to his pardon order, he comforted the Old Barlistan and told him that the war in the west was going smoothly and that he had taken down part of the territory in the southeast of the west, although Ed was in the east. There may be some small situation, but I will definitely win the final victory. I hope he can help him stabilize Junlin City before this. After writing the letter, Leonor personally asked someone to pretend to be a crow. He watched the black-colored crow flying to the east, and his heart fell into deep thought again. It was not until Brienne behind him called him to him. "What's wrong?" Leonor glanced at the female knight who was muffled. "Your Majesty, those sand snakes." Brienne put her helmet under her armpits, her freckled face, and she wanted to speak, but she still had an objection to Lyanna. "Sand snake, Brinny, the sand snake is the sand snake, you are you. Although they're dangerous, aren't you still by my side?" Leonor could only coax the female knight. "Don't worry, I will definitely defend your safety to the death." Brienne heard Leonor's words and immediately became energetic. She raised her chest and said that she would definitely protect the king. "Then please." Leonor laughed and was easy to coax, but as he thought about it, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He didn't want to coax people. Chapter 66 Pioneer. While staying in Deep Cry, Leonor ordered Landeo Tally to reorganize the existing coalition forces, count all the power that can be used, and urged them to defeat the Western Frontier nobles who fought with the Western Frontier Knights. After more than a month of battle, more than 40 Western nobles and territories, including the Brax family in Kadak City and the Shaliot family in Silver Mountain City, were all destroyed. After completing a large area of occupation, Leonor directly rewarded the merits in the main castle of Shenju City. "Abel Karanxi, in my name, for your contribution to destroying the traitor of Silver Mountain City, Helt Shalit, I give you the name of the Earl of Silver Mountain City. From now on, the land and taxes of Silver Mountain City will be returned. You all, Leonor held a mace and granted the title and to a middle-aged knight with a strong face. Abel Caranchi is a hired knight who serves Lyn's Lyden, who redeems his guilt by killing Lyn's Lyden's second son and kills him in the battle to attack Silver Mountain City. Halt Shalit, the Earl of Yinchin City, was therefore named the new Earl of Yinchin City and the territory of Yinchin City He Feng, who was personally received by the king, not to mention Abel himself, who was so excited that he kissed Leonor's instep. Even the many nobles and knights watching were breathing rapidly and their eyes were slightly red because they were sealed by Leonor's. It's Yinchin City. Unlike the isolated island that was enfeoffed the last time, the Yinchin City, which was enfeoffed by Leono this time, is a famous function in the west, and is rich in silver mines like Begang in the north. After Leonor enthroned Abar, he continued to walk down and successively granted the corresponding noble titles and territories to more than 40 knights who killed the nobles in the west. When the feudal was completed, the nobles of the Storm in River Bay who were watching the ceremony could no longer bear it. A reckless knight jumped out and knocked on the ground with the one in knee. "My king, I am Joel Andrew, the knight of the Stormland. Please give me glory to me as the pioneer of attacking the port of Lannister." Yinchin is a famous rich city in the west, but it is not the richest city in the west. The richest cities in the west are Lannister Port, Cain Ford and Goldeo City. Those places are either rich in gold or port commercial cities. When all the nobles and knights couldn't help trembling when they thought of the land where gold flowed out like water, the endless stream of goods, and the king's majesty who didn't care about his origins. As soon as Jor Anlu finished speaking, Leonor had not replied yet, but saw another knight in the river beside the clover emblem jumping out of the crowd, kneeling on one knee and asking for his order. "I am Aldo, the sword of golden oaks. The 60 spears of my family and I are willing to serve you, my majesty the king. I'm from Tongman City." In front of wealth and honor, everyone felt that they had a chance. The voices of asking for the vanguard were heard in the main fort of Shenju City. The soldiers who volunteered to ask for orders soon exceeded 2,000. In the hall, Leonor held a red mace and quietly watched more and more soldiers kneeling in front of him. Oberon, who had changed into a yellow robe, stood behind him, leaned forward slightly, and mumbled at him. "One sentence, if the devil of the 7-level hell lives in the world, it must be you." Leonor heard Oberon's complaints and glanced at him quietly. When the sound slowly sparse, he raised the red mace in his hand above his head's eye, shouted, and as his movement slowly calmed down, when Leonor put down the nail in his hand, the entire palace had already fallen into a needle, and he also spoke at this time. "Since you are so enthusiastic, I hereby declare that you are all my pioneers. My declaration remains valid, and there are 2 nobles guarding the port of Lannister, Tyrion Lannister and James Lannister. I hereby announce that whoever kills Tyrion, Tywin's young son, and a genius with outstanding wisdom can be awarded the title of Count of Lannister Port and the territory, and kills James can be awarded the town of Oxford Baron and territory." Wow, the whole hall was in an uproar again, and everyone was talking, because Leonor placed Tyrion's reward level above James. James is the strongest among the younger generation of the Lannister family and Tywin's favorite son. If he does not become the royal guard, he will definitely be the only heir to K. Rockford in the future. Whether it is revenge on Tywin from a personal emotional aspect or considering the strategy of killing the Western leader, James should be placed above his dwarf brother. But what no one expected was that Leonor actually put the little dwarf demon of the Lannister family first, and he paid far more attention than James Lannister. "I can compare with a golden stone. Warriors, fate lies with the 7 gods, but the sword is in your hands. Those who seek to survive will die, and those who bravely die will be able to live forever. Take a fight. The 7 gods are with you." Leonor had 7 consecutive points with one hand. "For the 7 gods, send Lannister to death, for the king." Various shouts almost broke through the castle of Deep Cave City. With Leonor's warhammer swing, the soldiers who were willing to be pioneers in the hall retreated like a tide. They returned to their respective stations, prepared weapons and luggage, and led them to the ground. He got on the war horses, and began to fight along the Golden Avenue towards Lannister Port on the earth wall of Deep Crying City. Leonor and Oberon stood side by side, and the two watched the crowds on the Golden Avenue outside the city together. A group of fools who died. Oberon looked at the soldiers on the road, feeling a little depressed for no reason. Lannister Port is the richest area in the western region. The Lannister family must have set up heavy troops there. These fools have no unified command and are not as large as others in terms of numbers. In the end, they will definitely be wiped out one by one. Instead of letting them restless in the team with all kinds of dreams, it's better to let them have some fun for Lannister. Leonor disagreed. If these guys stayed in the main force, they would definitely be unstable. It's better to send them first. He would not be able to go out to harass the Lannister family, and he would not be able to lose money if he really wanted to kill the little demon. And James, not thinking about him anymore, Oberyn shook his head vigorously, threw his depressed mood out of his mind, and then asked the guy next to him, "How is the East now? The troops in the north should have all arrived in Hegian. Why haven't they taken down Golden Tooth City yet?" "I don't know. The Starks failed to reach the city of Running on time. The North Army driven by Robb Stark was brave in combat. The Borden family of the Fortress of Terror was ordered to bypass Goldfang. His army robbed everywhere in the west. The results of the battle were quite good, but the eastern front could not be advanced. Many people died for the Castark family, Mormon family, and Amber family." Leonor calmly said to Oberyn on the eastern front, condition, "You're not going to help them." Oberyn felt something was wrong. "The people in the north will not accept it." Leonor directly rejected it. Robb Stark was arrogant, and his parents' life and death made him complain about him. He was restrained if he did not directly establish himself as king. Chapter 67 Resistance in the West. After the rectification of Shenju City, Liano can now dispatch a total of 60,000 troops, including more than 8,600 knights, 9,300 horse-riding attendants, and more than 30,000 infantrymen. 2,000 knights and their servants formed a vanguard army to set out first. Leonor divided the remaining troops into two parts. He and Loras personally led 3,000 knights and 1,000 infantrymen in the headquarters, with a total of 4,000 troops along the Golden Avenue. Set out to Lannisterport, as for Blue Road Talas, leading 5,000 knights to attack Sassfield City from Cock Valley City. After breaking through there, they head from the north to Lannisterport to meet Leonor, or it was to attack Leonor when he was fighting with the garrison in the port of Lannister, and the remaining infantry made every effort to ensure the army's logistics. Leonor did not decide to command the vanguard army, but sent a probe to the vanguard army. The result of the vanguard army fighting various western armies was successively teleported to his hands by these probes. Before approaching Lannisterport, the pioneer army was fiercely resisted by the people in the west. Every castle and manor in the west were resisting outsiders, and their troops were extremely powerful, distributed from Deep Crypto City to Lannister. In every fortress and manor between the port, the vanguard army, which was full of fighting spirit, could not even attack Lannisterport. On the yellowed animal skin map, located between Lannisterport and Deep Crystal City on the west coast, there are blocks after block, representing the resistance of the people in the western region. It's obvious that Lannister is planning to block it layer by layer. Leonor sat upright in front of the map, pressing his hand at Oberyn and Loras in front of him. "Then let's fight one by one. Let me charge." Lolas maintained his strong fighting spirit. "Okay, you can't count on him." Leonor looked at the brave Lolas, knowing that he could not count on strategy, so he could only look at Oberyn, who was holding his hands and crossing his legs. "It is obvious that the enemy is planning to consume our strength and disperse our army's strength. When the right time strikes our logistics route, we will be defeated by then." Oberyn gave his own opinion. "Then do you have a good way?" Leonor nodded slightly. He and Oberyn had the same view. This strategy was obviously the hand of the little demon. If it was James Lannister, he would probably be, "If you lead someone to a reckless wave, you will win. If you win, and if you lose, your whole family will die. It is better to be such an opponent. I think I can only rely on Lord Landeo now. The enemy will definitely be very careful about us on the Golden Avenue, but if he is in the north, he will definitely be negligent." Oberyn gave his opinion that it is the best the method is. Once Lord Landeo launches an attack from the north to Lannisterport, even if the enemy is prepared, the troops will definitely be dispersed and will create opportunities for us. Ditchin, convey a copy of the situation we are facing now to your father. You don't have to ask him what to do, just tell him the situation. Leonor turned his head and asked Ditchin Tally. "Yes." Dickon Tally bent over and responded to the order, then quickly left to convey the information as he said, "Maybe we can attack head-on and create opportunities for Lord Landeo?" Lolas couldn't help but come up with an idea. He didn't want to just sit there. "No, we are the front. Once we lose, the logistics will not be guaranteed. Then it will be useless for Lord Landeo to fight." A baron turned his head and looked at the young and energetic Lolas, and slowly took action. "He tells it, then we will do nothing now." Lolas couldn't help but say, "You have to be patient, Loras. This is a war and an unprecedented hunt. Our prey is one of the oldest families on this land." Leonor appeased Loras. "Yes." Lolas dared to be presumptuous to Oberyn. But he had to soften his attitude towards Leonor, but he was still unhappy in his heart. "Your Majesty, can you allow me to retreat first? Go. Please invite Count Abel to me." Leonor felt that it was useless to stay Loras, so he let him come and go as he watched Lolas leave the tent. Oberon rubbed his hands and curled his lips. It's obvious that he's not as good as his brother, whether it's Velas or Garland. He doesn't need to compete with his brother. Leonor smiled. The Terrier family had already decided the order. Varys broke his leg in the competition with Oberon, and Garland had been designated as the official heir. Lolas is just an optional person. He is still sad about losing Renly. While he was talking, the tent was lifted up, and Earl of Silver Mountain City, Abel Caraxi, who was wearing a lion's skin as a cloak, walked into the tent and knelt down to Leonor on one knee. "Abar, send your men into the western frontier, and you don't need to attack. You go to the knights and lobby them. My pardon and promise are still valid. If you can't lobby, then find out the distribution of the troops in the western frontier for me." Leonor asked Abar Caraxi, because the vanguard army was blocked and the fierce resistance in the western frontier was strong. What he needed to do most now was to first understand the reality of the opponent. The surrendered western frontier knights were the best horse-sided 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 horse-s candidate? Yes, my majesty. The newly promoted Earl of Yinchin City followed Leon's promise. The provocateur, who was appointed by the western knights, entered the enemy territory from all walks, lobbying the low-level knights from all walks of life, and exploring the enemy situation in various places, and finally passing it back to Leonor's hands through the information sent by the western explorers. Leonor had a rough understanding of the situation in the western border. But then he had another doubt. The western frontier is indeed in a situation of national resistance. It is fine if those western nobles have been given a reward order. After all, the knights have no nobles' heads as a letter of fame and can only resist. But why do civilians resist? The western frontier where the whole nation resisted was extremely powerful. Although the quality of the troops was not high, the number of people reached hundreds of thousands. Not only civilians, but also the probing horses in the vanguard army also reported that there were unknown numbers of savages attacking them. The savages are a very special group of Westeros. They are humans who do not obey the rule of the nobles and flee into the deep mountains and wilderness. They wander outside civilization all day long and live only on the land north of the Red Char River, especially outside the Great Wall in the north. There are the most icy and snowy areas and the Bright Moon Mountains in the Eastern Valley, so why are there now also the western border? The little devil was obviously not captured by Catelyn, so he had not been taken to the east. How could there be savages appear in the West Army? Before Leonor could figure out these problems, he ushered in a big event. The Central Army where he was located encountered an attack. It seemed that some part of the Western Army in Lannisterport took the initiative to attack. Chapter 68 Night Attack. The wind was howling in the night, and the sound of killing suddenly came from outside the tent. When Leonor heard the rushing sound, he was shocked. He touched the nail and stood up with no choice. He saw Brienne in light armor and iron armor. Abea, holding a spear, came in from outside the tent, guarded by Abea's sisters Nemilia and Tarini in the side of the wind. "Your Majesty, we are attacked." Brienne looked anxious. "Abea, goes and see what the situation is. Don't participate in the battle. If you find out the situation, come back and report it to me." Leonor stood up and ordered. "Yes." Brienne turned around and went out of the tent without saying a word. "Name and Tarini, come in and put on armor for me." "Are there any other guards outside?" Leonor said, and he raised his voice so loudly. He found that there were a lot of noisy footsteps outside the tent, which was obvious. "The night attack scared me." When many people arrived, he began to hear people shouting, "Lannister is here." "Yes." The person who replied to Leonor was Abea. The Sand Snake was frightened by Leonor's sudden increase in volume, and his expression showed a little bit of surprise and disbelief, because Leonor has always been kind. "Treat them with a face." Outside the tent, the tall and slender Nemilia and the white-skinned Tarini entered the tent, and their faces were at a loss. "What are you still waiting for?" Leonor opened his arms and cursed. Then the two Sand Snakes realized it and took out their armor and hung them for him. "Your Majesty," Dickon's voice came from outside the door. "Dickon, go and run around the camp and see what's going on in the camp, so that all the soldiers can stand on my post. Everyone who dares to shout and run will be killed on the spot." Leonor lets the two Sand Snakes put on armor for him and orders to Dickon outside the tent. "Yes." The young Tally took his order to leave without entering the door. "You go too." Ride on your horse. When you see the kind of person in the camp who dares to yell and run around, and doesn't listen, you'll stab me to death with a spear, Leonor shouted and said that he was stunned by the silence next to him. Yes, the sand snake, who received the order, finally stopped staying still and turned around and left the tent when the two sand snakes helped him put on the armor. Leonor shook his body, turned his head to look at Nemilia and Tarini, and saw the two beautiful sand snakes looking at him with their eyes. I was very stunned and a little angry. What are you looking at? Have you never seen me? When facing him, Tarini, who was younger, fair-skinned and had blue eyes, turned her eyes away, and her skin was also white but gray eyes. Nemilia, who had a braid, rolled her eyes. Ha ha ha. Leonor couldn't help laughing when he saw the cute appearance of the two sand snakes. He turned around and took a bag and tied it on his face. He took big steps to get out of the tent. As a result, as soon as he lifted the curtain, he almost got hit by a figure. What are you doing? Leonor started to slap the person in the face, making the other party confused. Your Majesty, our flanks have been attacked. Aurad responded with his face covering. I was attacked and I was attacked. Go and call the guards, bring my horse over, and my flag, Leonor ordered. Yes, Aurad left with his face covering his face. Where are your weapons? Leonor turned his head and looked at Nemilia and Tarini behind him. Nemilia listened to Leonor's words and took out a long whip from behind her waist, while Tarini took out a dagger. This weapon doesn't work on the battlefield. Leonor threw his mace to Nemilia. When Aurad brought a war horse, he took a triangular sword from the saddle and threw it to Tarini. As for himself, he turned over and took a horse, took a bow and took an arrow. Rise the flag up and go. Leonor sat on the horse, holding a bow in one hand and taking an arrow in the other, knocking his heel on the horse's belly, and walking twice, while Aurad covered his face and held the flag with his eyes and raised it with his eyes. Behind him a group of guards were quickly gathered, and their sight was not high at night, but the gathering crowd made the soldiers safe, especially when they saw Leonor wearing armor and bows, riding on horseback, and the crowned stag behind him. The flag has found its backbone soon. Dickon and Abea, who were sent out to patrol, rushed back on horseback, and the two explained the situation of the entire camp to Leonor. The area guarded by Loras on the left side of the camp was attacked, with savages and fully armored knights. They attacked with a brown, black and white wildboar flag and dispersed many knights in the riverside land. It's the Kretch family in the Yangji Hall. Have you encountered attacks in other camps? Leonor heard the black and white wildboar flag and knew who the enemy was attacked, the ruling family in the Yangji Hall on the Binhe Avenue. No, Count Abel is pacifying people, Abea responded to Leonor. Very good, you are here, Dickon, come and lead them and comfort everyone, don't be afraid or impulsive. Leonor asked Dickon to take charge of the camp for him. Yes, Dickon nodded quickly. Brinny, Abea, Aurad, Nemilia, Tarini, and 50 guards will come, and everyone will ride on horseback and go to the south barracks with me. When the corresponding people gathered in order, Leonor took the king's flag representing his identity and headed towards the Zuoying camp, which had the loudest rushing sound. Where there was a fire, Zuoying was attacked by the enemy at night, and it was a mess. In the light of burning tents and bonfires, unknown numbers of enemies were rushing to death. Most of the knights in the river bend were chased and panicked, and only a few brave people were resisting. I am Leonor Baratheon. Everyone gathered here, seeing the chaos on the scene. Leonor was a little angry and shot her horse to death. He took the bow and arrow and shot her horse to death, and at the same time, let the chaotic crowd gather on the battlefield. The knights of the river bend heard the sound and subconsciously looked at it. When they saw the tall horse, Leonor, and the crowned stag flag behind him, they immediately found the backbone and the one who should resist. Resist, move closer. The knights in the camp saw Leonor, and the enemies attacked at night also saw him. 30 or 40 knights began to get rid of the enemies and gathered together, and then rushed towards him. Abea, take 10 people to rush over and destroy them. Leonor saw the crowd gathering with the enemy, and pointed a big red and white bow in his hand, letting his biggest sand snake lead people to rush over. Yes, Abea responded high, then knocked the war horse under her crotch, and led 10 cavalrymen to rush over as Leonor's bow tip. In just one round, the crowd on the opposite side was destroyed at the moment when Abea defeated the small groups of enemies. More enemy teams gathered, and a black and white wildboar flag with a brown bottom floated out of the darkness, attracting more full-armored knights to gather together, with a fierce look. Drive the knights in the river bay in the camp and come to Leonor's royal flag. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, It means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69, Night of the Rain Hall. In the dark night, the black and white wild boar flag on the brown bottom faces the crowned stag flag on the yellow bottom faces across the air. Knights are constantly gathering under the two flags, preparing for the final battle. Leonor sat under the banner, looking at the bustling people in the distance. His soul was sophisticated that he could penetrate the darkness. However, there were many people on the other side, and he could not recognize which leader was, so he could only draw out a three-edged one. The arrow hit the bowstring and shouted to the distance, "Sir Crap." He remembered that the noble surname of the chicken hall was Clee. He forgot what the current head of the family name was, but it was definitely true that he called Sir Clee. As long as anyone responded, he would give the other party an arrow and cut off the other party's head, and then rushed over and rushed forward. Leonor had a good plan, but unfortunately he shouted Sir Clee and no one responded to him. Instead, the troops there gathered and were about to start charging. Leonor saw the crowds gathering on the other side, and glanced at his side again. Abaya, who had been sent out to charge, has now brought people back. He has about 50 riders, and there are many rivers and bays. The knights gathered, but they were all in hiking. Some of them didn't even have weapons, let alone armor. It is impossible to win if you fight like this. You must find a way. Leonor looked at the opposite side again, and saw the crowd surging. He could see through the darkness, but he didn't recognize which one was the head of Cretch's family. However, he glanced at him and saw the black and white wild pig with brown bottom in the crowd opposite. The flag couldn't help but move, and immediately opened the full moon and aimed at the guy who was playing the flag. Whoosh! The heavy arrow broke out from the string up. A muffled groan came from the dark night. The fully armored knight who was hitting the flag fell down from his chest, and the black and white wild boar flag he was trapped in his hand fell down darkly. The knights of the Yangji Hall, who had gathered their momentum and were about to launch a charge, felt a concealed look on their heads and a thing floated down. When they looked closely, they suddenly stopped, roar over and kill them all. Leonor shot the flag bearer to death, and raised his big red and white bow forward. Zalulu neighed, and the warhorse under his crotch had already rushed out. Run! Abaya raised his spear, Brienne waved his sword, and the two of them arrived first, protecting Leonor, and 50 guards including Namilia and Tyrion were behind him, and the river bay was. The knights realized it later, but were soon infected. Although they did not have war horses, those with weapons took weapons, and those without weapons simply copied a stone. The whole army charged forward. If they did not charge at this time, the enemy would rush up and all would die. The knights in the chicken hall lost the guidance of the flag, and the momentum of the charge was blocked. In the blink of an eye, they were scattered by the counter-charge of the troops led by Leonor, and they were in chaos in the darkness. Some knights wanted to pick up the flag again. I still want to resist. Leonor was protected by Abaya and Brienne. Seeing someone trying to raise the flag again, he shot through his neck without saying a word. Go and kill him, Leonor shouted to the left and right. Abaya rushed over without hesitation, and picked up the knight with a spear. Brienne was still protecting Leonor. Beside him, he raised his great sword, Han Bing, and split a close knight, including the man and the sword, and snatched a spear from him. Give it to me. Leonor put the big bow on his body, asked the spear through Brienne's hand, and grabbed it under his armpit and rushed to Abaya. Abaya tried hard to pick the knight on the spear, stepped on the black and white wild boar flag again under the horse's hooves, waved the spear in his hand, and intimidated the knights of the chicken hall who wanted to approach, until Leonor rode his horse and held the spear. Blast over with Brienne. The knights in the chicken hall kept accumulating their offensives, but were disbanded. At this moment, there was no way out. They left in groups of horses without any nostalgia. Don't chase. Leonor saw the knights in the chicken hall retreat and shouted to the left and right, Brenne, go find Loras and let him see me. Yes, Brienne held the big sword. Hanbing nodded when she heard this, and went to find someone. Stand my king flag here. Leonor pointed his spear and asked Arrod to stand firmly on the king flag he was carrying, while he himself stood under the flag, running back and forth, instructing the guards to gather again. Crowd, treating the injured knight. After a while, Brienne, who was riding a horse, returned, and Lolas, who was not well clad, also rode a horse to follow her, with many bloodstains on her body, injured. Leonor hit the horse and asked Loras. No. Lolas looked very ashamed. The blood on his body was not his. Don't worry, people always suffer losses. This time the person who attacked us was Cretch of the Chicken Hall. If you look back, you will have the chance to challenge and kill him, Leonor encouraged. Yeah, Lolas nodded fiercely after comforting Loras. Leonor continued to direct the cleanup of the mess when the sun rose from the horizon. 60% or 70% of Leonor's army camp were destroyed, and many knights were killed. In addition to the knights in the Chicken Hall, there were also many armored men wearing animal leather hoods. Most of the savages were killed on the spot, and a small number were captured, giving Leonor a chance to interrogate. Where are you savages? The black and powerful Aobe lowered her head in enduring the discomfort, and asked the guy who was full of hair and blood, who looked like a wild beast than a human. The Moon Mountains. The Moon Tribe? The savage captive answered in a slightly strange common language. Why join the Western Army? Leonor found a pony and sat there with his knees in his hands. Namelia, Tarini, Brienne and Arad behind him held his harps and arrows and bows for him and maces and other equipment. Half-Man promised us that as long as we helped them, they would help us get the land back. The savage captive had his yellow teeth and his expression was a little angry. Half-Man, Abea frowned, a little puzzled who this is. Tyrion Lannister. Is Half-Man a dwarf? Leonor mentioned the name, and saw that the savage was puzzled, so he described it to him. Yes, he is only half the height of us. The savage nodded, so he called Half-Man. If I let you go, will you still help them? Leonor waved his hand, asked Abea to retreat, and directly interrogated the savage himself. No. Those people didn't keep their promises and agreed to fight together, but ran away by themselves. Quaoahoha hated them. The savage expression was ferocious, and he angrily scolded the knights of the Western Rice Hall. Regardless of their comrade's life or death, Kawaia, your name. Leonor was amused by the savage's name. Quaoa is Quaoa. The wild man was so angry. Then do you want to fight with us? Leonor asked again with a smile. I won't fight anymore. Quaoa is going home. The savage Quaoa was discouraged. They could not beat these guys in iron clothes, even if they were wearing iron clothes. All savages, as long as they are willing to swear to no longer be with Lannister and no longer fight with us, they will be let go. Leonor took action against the savages. Chapter 70 The Conditions of the Church. By dawn, the detailed casualties were counted, and the coalition forces directly lost more than 400 knights, and more of the knights were missing. The original 5,000 troops were only 2,800 knights and 1,000 infantrymen. As for in the Chicken Hall, Leonor asked people to search the battlefield and only picked up about 80 bodies. The casualties of the night attack were too great. If the Westerners fought like this a few more times, I'm afraid the team would not be able to take over. Leonor dispatched 2,000 knights from Deep Crypt to supplement, then made adjustments to the strategic plan, accelerated the advancement to Lannister Port, vigorously cleared the small fortress and manor on the way, and waited for the Blue Road to take place on the flank. While vigorously clearing out the small fortresses and manors along the way, the knights also captured a considerable number of civilians from the west. The civilians from the west also joined the resistance and were very determined. However, most of their battles were confused and they were extremely afraid of the knights. After the Lord and the knights were defeated, they all chose to escape or surrender. Leonor was very cruel to the nobles and knights, but was very lenient to the civilians. He asked about the reasons for joining the war, except for a very few who were determined to defend their homeland. Most of them answered, I don't know, it was the bishop who said he wanted this, the priest let us do this, the 7 gods ask us to do this. They are still confused, but it can be roughly inferred that their joining the war was a boost to the fire Westeros. The 7 gods of Andals are in existence that cannot be ignored. They are the mainstream culture of society and the source of the knight system. The civilians are afraid of the noble knights on the surface and cursed in their hearts, but they are from the inside out to the outside of the gods' obedience. If it is the help of the 7 gods priests, then the mobilization ability of the western region is understandable. Leonor found out the source of the western mobilization ability ascendance, and immediately sent a crow to King's Landing City, asking Vincent to try to solve the problem from the Archbishop. The crow flew away and flew back, bringing the church reply conveyed by Vincent. The church expressed its willingness to solve the problem, but also put forward corresponding conditions. First, it hopes that Leonor can repay the 1.6 million golden dragons owed to the church during Robert's period as soon as possible, and second, it hopes that the church can be in front of the future king's imperial decree. The meeting has a place. If the latter can be agreed, the church can exempt part of the debts from the former. If it is willing to appoint a certain archbishop as the hand of the king, the church is willing to exempt all debts. Those guys in the church are not good at vegetarianism and worshipping God. but they are good at doing business. They dare to take advantage of the situation to fight my disaster. Leonor grinded his teeth in his heart when facing the church's proposal, but he suppressed his anger and wrote a letter to Vincent, asking him to talk to the church on his behalf, return part of the debt, and then urge him to the church will solve this problem first as long as the war in the Western Front ended successfully. He would let the guys in the church spit out whatever they ate. It took about a week to travel, write letters and talk instructions. After receiving 300,000 gold dragon funds, the church sent chaotic crows, requiring all priests in the western region to no longer cooperate with the princes in the western region to incite civilians to join the war. Violators will be dismissed from their churches, while ordering the priests are prohibited from participating in the war. The church also sent some low-level priests and nuns to the front line to help appease civilians and treat the wounded. With the help of the church, Leonor's army no longer suffered strong resistance from the military and civilians in the west. In addition, he released Kotwal and the savages who were waiting for him to release the news. The savage tribes in the Mingayu Mountains no longer believed in the west and began to gather their tribes and flee. Many Western knights began to watch the battle and directly escaped from the main force of the Western army. The main focus of the situation is that when a wall falls down, everyone pushes it, and when thousands of people beat it without the desperate resistance of the civilians and the harassment of the savages, Leonor's army was unstoppable and directly attacked the city of Lannisterport. He originally planned to fight the Western Frontier Army at Lannisterport, destroying most of the Western Frontier forces here and reducing the difficulty of siege in Qing City, but when his army arrived here, the city fires were everywhere and black smoke was seen. Like a cloud, the Lannister family was very determined and withdrew all their troops and set fire to the city. Even if it was burned to white ground, it would not be left to Leono. These bastards. Leono looked at the rising flames in the city and couldn't help but curse. Those lions were really cruel. The Lannisterport was crying and screaming, and many people were anxious to try out the fire. Leonor was hesitant and entangled in his heart. When he saw this situation, his most important task now should be to command the army to the north and pursue the remnants of Lannister's army. If he was lucky enough, he could even bit the remaining troops into Qing City, saving the most difficult siege battle. But in this case, Lannisterport would have to be burned to white land and many people would be displaced. If he stayed, he might be able to save some of the port of Lannister, but the people here may not necessarily thank him, and he will definitely add a bunch of burdens afterwards because surviving residents have to eat and drink. It will definitely increase their logistics part, and this may also be the reason why the Lannister family wants to set fire to the city. Fuck, Leonor swears. Why can't Lannister's people be stupid? Can't they let themselves kill them obediently? What are you thinking? Oberyn rode to Leonor and asked him why he hadn't given orders to go north, so that he could catch up with some remaining soldiers. Loras and Abel led 2,000 knights to pursue the north, and the infantry stayed behind, and went to the city to put out the fire, and sent some horse-riding servants back to the city of Shenzhou to transport grain, and then sent crows to the King's Landing, High Court and Finksy Fort, let them transport grain from sea to the port of Lannister. Leonor gave a series of orders to Arad beside him. Yes, Arad, who was born in a flea nest, couldn't help but lit up when he heard Leonor's words. He quickly rode his horse to pass the order, and as for Deccan, he served with the flag. Your Highness, please come to the city with me to command the fire. Leonor asked Oberyn. It's no point in saving this city now. Oberyn advised Leonor, it is not necessary to chase now. The defense of Qing City is difficult to break in a short time. We need this place as a logistics transfer place. Leonor casually found a reason for himself that looks very decent. Oberyn was about to refute, but after hearing Leonor say it, he couldn't help but turn his head around. It seemed like this was the case. We will still rule the western border after the war. Our practices in the past are very unfriendly to them. If we save here, we can tell the civilians in the western border that we are not here to destroy them. Leonor found another reason. Then what are we waiting for? Oberyn was convinced. There was nothing wrong with it, so just do it. Let your sand snake group be on guard. My infantry is responsible for putting out the fire. Now it is the southeast wind. Demolition of the houses in the southeast direction and stop the fire from spreading. Leonor looked at the situation in the city, start issuing a series of firefighting orders. Chapter 71 Qing City. After spending a whole day and a night, Leonor organized his infantry to slash the walls and tear down the houses, creating a fire barrier in the downwind of the city, successfully preventing the spread of the fire, saving nearly half of the city, and as for the other half, the city is still burning in the fire. The flames burned for 3 days but they didn't burn out, but fortunately, The residents of Port Lannister were quite friendly to Leonor and others and did not do anything excessive. Leonor also distributed some of the food to the homeless. The homeless residents also gave each of the infantrymen and the Sand Snake regiments who participated in the firefighting to comfort them. On the other hand, the knights he sent out failed to catch up with Lannister. They were sobbed at the foot of Qing City, but good news came from the Blue Road, and he had successfully captured Saffiel, Deccan, and also met with Luce Bolton, Count of the North Terror Fort raided in the Western Territory, on the Westeros, where architectural wonders are everywhere. Qing City is a building that is as famous as the Windsmoke Castle that can fight against the storm, the Great Wall that blocks the White Walkers in the north, and the legendary Old Town Tower. This castle is different from Fanxi Castle and Red Castle. It is built directly in a cave in a huge rock on a mountain. The mountain is the city wall and the mine is the residence on a high slope outside Qing City. Leonor rode his horse in parallel with Oberyn, followed by Abaya, Brienne and others. Everyone looked at the giant creature in the distance from a high place. Leonor couldn't help sighing when he saw the castle lying on the beach like a giant. We have to fight. If you don't even have this challenge, why do you think the Lannister family should gain a foothold in this land? Oberyn sneered. How did Lannister take him from the Kestley family? Leonor took a deep breath, intending to find some experience from history. Kyle Rock City is not from the Lannister family. It originally belonged to a family called Kestley. The ancestor of the Lannister family, the Clever Lane, took him away from the Kestley family, and the Lannister family was founded. There are several legends, and most of them think that Lane planted his seeds in the belly of the Kestley woman and conquered this place by giving birth. Do you want to try it too? Oberyn finally found one opportunity. He always wanted to make Leonor's dirty jokes, and this guy seemed to be not interested in such things. I have no feelings for the women of the Lannister family. Leonor curled his lips directly. You just need not be indifferent to women, Oberyn said, looking at Amelia and Tyrion behind him. Leonor rolled his eyes to the red venomous snake who always liked to make sex jokes, continued to look at the fortress in the distance, and then asked, what about Aegon? How did Targaryen conquer here? By the dragon? No, it was the Lannister family who was seeking death by themselves. At that time, King Llewellyn sent an army to form a coalition with Meng and I of the Huandi Gardner family, and started a war with Aegon I in the north of Huandi. Aegon I rode his 3 heads. The dragon enters the battlefield. The main force was destroyed by Dragon Flame, and the Lannister family surrendered. When Leonor heard that the 3-headed dragons entered the battlefield, he knew what the result was, but he thought of another thing again. And the dragon mother seemed to have 3-headed dragons. Speaking of which, he is now conquering the western frontier, saying I can only live one of the Lannisters and I all day long, but in fact he and the dragon mom, no, he and Daenerys Targaryen. It seems that only one person can live in the Westeros continent. Most families can bow their knees to Daenerys and ask for surrender, but the Baratheon family does not. Daenerys will never accept the rebellious Baratheon family, so sooner or later he and the other party, there will be a battle. Daenerys also has 3 dragons. He is now struggling to deal with the Shadow Killer. If he encounters those 3 dragons in the future, wouldn't he take jujube pills? What are you thinking? Oberyn couldn't help but be curious when he saw Leonor suddenly disappearing. His voice. What was going on in his mind? No, nothing. Leonor came back to his senses and rejected it. Just as he was about to reply, he heard a sound of horse hooves. As the sound was heard, a bunch of smoke rolled over under the hillside, with 2 flags in the smoke, one of which was the Tully family's steady hunter flag, and the other was pink, with a red human body painted on it. Shoulders, the arms, legs and chest are contrasting with each other's thickness, and the strokes are simple, but the muscle lines are lifelike, as if they are skinned. It's the people from the North Terror Fort. Oberyn turned his horse. You can't go over and see them. They're here. Leonor did not move, and withdrew his gaze. He did not like the people of the Horror Fort. While he was talking, the smoke and dust had already rolled to the top of the slope. The knights tied the horses' reins. The last Landeo Tally was dressed in military uniform. Seeing Leonor standing on the top of the slope, he jumped off the horse and stroked his chest with his hands. When he greeted him, he shouted, Your Majesty. Next to Blue Road, a tall man with long black hair, pale eyes and a pale and smooth face jumped off the horse, followed Blue Road Tally to Leonor on the horse, saying Your Majesty. His soft words were completely different from the vulgar and barbaric that was used to in the north, which made Oberyn and others stare at each other. Luce Bolton of the Horror Fort, you'll have a chance to go this trip. Leonor pulled the horse around, and the thin and pale Lewis Bolton nodded with arrogant expression. "It is our duty to serve the king." Lewis Bolton was not angry with Leonor's arrogant expression, but was even more humble. "The battle between the princes of the Northern Territory is not going well. But you are an exception." Leonor sat on his horse, pinched his waist with his right hand, looked down at the Count of the Horror Fort from a high place, observing his expression. "Because this is fighting for the king." Lewis Bolton did not show any abnormal expression, and expressed that as a servant, it was natural that he fought hard for the king. "Very good. I think you are very good, much better than the other princes in the north." Leonor saw Lewis Bolton's expression, made a satisfied expression and jumped off the horse. "This is my honor." Lewis Bolton also laughed this time. "Come on, my Lord Bolton, come and see this Qing city. Do you have a good way to capture him?" Leonor jumped off his horse, waved his hand to recruit old Bolton to his side. He pointed his right hand at Qing city on the distant seashore, and asked him about the way to break the city. "My king, I have never seen the majesty of this city before. I am afraid that only the Great Wall of Desperateness can be compared with it, and the Great Wall of Desperateness has not been captured yet." Lewis Bolton's pale eyes reflected the seashore. The giant city responded softly. "There's no way." Leonor frowned. "If it were me, I would try to use fear to make the city open itself. This is not a good idea. At least I don't think it is." Leonor sighed. "This guy is just here to surrender and invite him, and it is useless." "What about the lockdown?" Lewis Bolton tried to please. "It's useless. There is a port inside Qing city leading to the outside world." Leonor shook his head. Chapter 72 Little Rose. On the hillside outside Qing city, Leonor led everyone to discuss for a long time, but he did not discuss a suitable way to break the city. The solution that everyone came up with was either to siege the city and force the people in Qing city to surrender at the end of their lives, or to make promises to rebel and cause civil strife in the people inside. No matter which one is not a way to break the city head on. It is really too outrageous for Qing city to come. Even if the Targaryen family brings dragons over, they may not be able to conquer the city without 50 dragons. It seems that there is no way to break the city by using conventional methods. Seeing that everyone had no choice, Leonor could only sigh. He didn't want to use it. "You have any unconventional methods?" Oberon could hear what Leonor said. "It's a little bit." Leonor nodded, but did not explain in detail, but turned his head and spoke to Landeo. "Master Landeo, you come and organize all the troops." "Yes." Landeo Tally quickly leaned over and waited for the king's order. "Siege the city first." Leonor asked the Blue Road organization to surround Qing city first. "Yes." Landeo Tally nodded again, then took the order and left. Qing city is a city built on a mountainous rock, standing on the seashore, back by the Sunset Sea. There is a deep trench outside the city as a moat, and only a stone bridge can pass through it in order to resist Leonor's army. The Lannister clan had destroyed the stone bridge, and the broken gravel fell into the deep sea, cutting off the only outward road. The enemy could not enter Qing city, and the people in Qing city could not get out, so they watched helplessly. Teams gathered on the land on the hillside outside the city. Landeo Tally faithfully carried out Leonor's order, organized the army outside Qing city, and surrounded the land roads in Qing city with a continuous stream of water and camp. Leonor asked Landeo to organize a besiege, and he used a crow to return to King's Landing city, asking Dora to arrange for his improved wildfire and purple thunder gunpowder to transport to the western frontier. His unusual siege method is to use wildfire or gunpowder to explode Qing city. However, in this case, the entire Qing city will inevitably be blown up and destroyed. He didn't really want to hurt the architectural wonder of Qing city, nor did he want to break his crowning scene, but he didn't care much about it now. Soon, the purple thunder gunpowder and improved wildfire he requested were transported to Lannister Port through a ship. His practice of rescuing Lannister Port in time was accidentally accelerated, and the army's logistics was indeed accelerated, because sea transportation was more than land transportation. Be good and strong. In addition to the required purple thunder gunpowder and improved wildfire, the fleet also transported siege equipment, such as scorpion crossbows, catapults, and a large amount of mill tapestries, wine and food. Leonor only thought it was a labor force, and he didn't care too much. He sent the scorpion crossbow and catapult to the front line and handed it to Landeo, so that he could use these to launch a long-range attack on Qing city, but the army should not be allowed to enter the attack. The nearest soldiers must also stand safely. "What does your majesty mean?" Landeo Tally was confused when he received the order and looked up at his son, who came to pass the order. "I don't know. I dare not ask." Dickon Tully shook his head. Don't have the intention to guess the monarch. Since His Majesty the King has an order, then we will implement it firmly. Landeo Tally was confused, but thinking that the battle ended here, His Majesty the King was definitely not the kind of thinking. If you are a person who comes out, you must have a complete plan and don't make any guesses. The Earl of Gyerling faithfully implemented Leonor's request, sent people to erect the scorpion crossbow and catapulted machine, and then attacked the gate and walls of Qing City day and night. The whole of Qing City is a huge mountain-like rock. A watchtower is built on the top of the mountain, and the head of the city is cut out from the hillside. The hollow abdomen is used as a palace. Except for the city gate that connects to the land through the trench, almost the entire city is filled with heavy rocks. This unique structure allows the city to withstand the burning from the dragon flames. However, facing the stone thrown by the machine, a single piece may not be a big deal, but after being too many, it begins to fall into large areas of rock. Then the whole was slaughtered by a big arrow from the scorpion crossbow, and the mountain that acted as the city wall became increasingly concave and thin. The coalition forces kept using catapults and scorpion crossbows outside, and Leonor was not idle either. He beat improved wildfire and purple thunder gunpowder into powder, and waited until he left his body at night to get out of his body and remove the gunpowder powder from Lannister. Before transporting it to Qing City within the port, fill it into the hole nailed out by the scorpion crossbow on the city wall, and finally compact it with dry soil. After hundreds of kilograms of purple thunder gunpowder and wildfires were filled in the walls of Qing City, Leonor calculated his days, and it had been half a month since he surrounded Qing City. On this day, the preparations were completely completed. Leonor rode a yellow horse and left Lannister Harbor under the escort of Brienne and Abea and other Sand Snake sisters. He came to the military camp in front of Qing City. He was preparing to inspect the place and then deploy the offensive work after breaking the city, but as soon as he entered the military camp, he was a little unhappy. The knights were very loose in the camp where the flags were waving. Although most of them were armored, the people standing guard were chatting, and more people were gathering in the middle of the camp to watch a girl in green skirts sing. Young warriors, you have been remembered in history. The girl in green skirt stood on a short stool, singing the knights with her slightly gorgeous voice and songs, and the knights listened too. It should be relished, at least it should be relished. Leonor looked at the girl in green skirt and saw that she was about 18 or 19 years old, with brown hair and green eyes, very beautiful and charming, and she looked familiar. She had never come into contact with any socialites in the camp, prostitutes, and so on. Dickon, who is with him? Asked. Who is this? It's Miss Tyrael. Dickon responded carefully. Marguerite Tyrael. Leonor suddenly realized, no wonder he looked familiar. It turned out to be her. Just as Leonor and his guards were riding on horseback, Margaret in the green skirt had already finished singing a song. She used the song to praise the heroism of the knights. After the song was over, she picked up two small fists and used abnormality. He whispered in a passionate tone, "Warriors, please believe your king. He will not let your expectations down. Lannister is already our possession, and you will be rewarded with a breaking of this city." Margaret not only verbally motivated the knights, but also her entourage took out a bag full of silver coins, which attracted many knights to come forward to rob. "This is working on the army for me." Leonor saw what Margaret was doing, but he was not happy with the help of his good wife. Instead, he frowned. After thinking for a long time, he did not interfere in the looting in the field and looked at Brienne behind him. "Waiting for someone? Walk," he said, pulling out his horse and leaving, taking Brienne and others to go to find Landeo, who was in charge. But before he could urge the horse, he heard a tender cry, "Jazz, please wait a moment." Leonor heard the voice and looked away. He saw Margaret in the green skirt in the distance, holding a handful of silver coins, scattering the crowd and walking towards him and others, as if he was coming to give him money. "Didn't recognize me?" Leonor subconsciously looked up and then remembered that he was preparing to inspect. He did not shoot the king's flag, but when he turned his head and saw Dickon Tully behind him, his heart was like a mirror again. Chapter 73 The Mistress of the Sand Snake. With the character of Little Rose Margaret, how could she not know the heir of the Tully family, the important vassal of her family? She probably wanted to create an unexpected encounter. Leonor's heart was like minging. When Margaret came close, he also changed into a smiling face. He turned his head and looked at the girl in the green skirt and white flower coming to the front. He did not dismount and sat directly on the horse and bowed to her. Smiling, "Beautiful lady, are you okay with me?" "Ah, dear Jazz, It's so rude that I haven't asked your name yet." Margaret lowered her head in the face of the handsome man with the black hair and blue eyes, and took a step back as if she was panicked. Her steps were as light as a deer, and her posture was like a deer as natural as a lady. She even held the silver coin in her hand that seemed to be handing to Leonor and others. "If you don't know, I'm so embarrassed. My name is Leonor Baratheon." Seeing Margaret's appearance, Leonor no longer smiled, but straightened his waist. Sitting on a horse, his voice became cold and handsome. There were many knights present. When they saw Margaret being frightened, they were a little angry and wanted to go forward to argue and even wanted to challenge, but when they heard Leonor's self-reported name, they were all shocked. An uproar sound was made. "His Majesty the King, I am Margaret Tyrael, your future wife." Margaret also had a frightened expression on his face, but he still acted generously, and reported his name and gave him a name. The future wife regards herself as a say. Sitting on a horse, he was afraid of the numerous knights and a beautiful girl. For a normal man, it should be a moment of accomplishment. Unfortunately, Leonor did not feel as if he had shown up as a success, because he knew this everything was created by Margaret to please herself. Very teasing woman. Leonor made a conclusion about Margaret. He did not like this woman who had almost become his sister-in-law or younger sibling. However, thinking of the support of the Tyrion family, he nodded to the girl. "I'm glad to know you, Miss Margaret. You'll leave the barracks immediately after you finish your own business. Our wedding will begin after the breakup of Kyle Rock City." "Yes, Your Majesty." Margaret lowered her head, preventing Leonor from seeing her expression immediately. "Okay, let's all disperse." Leonor waved to the knights and let them all disperse. There is no difference between the knights standing together, but at this moment, the difference can be seen. The vulgar people push their companions away, while the slightly polite people leave after giving a polite courtesy. There are still 25. Secretly spitting out a mouthful of spitting and thinking that no one is see. Leonor took the performance of many knights in his eyes, disagreed with it, and did not go to see Zio Rose. After everyone left, he went to find Landeo. Directly when he found Landeo, he was under the city of Qing City, without armor, wearing a decent dark green suit, and personally directed 3 stone catapults and 18 scorpion crossbows to output against the city wall, making the opposite mountain constantly drop rocks down. "Sir Landeo, stop!" Leonor directly shouted to Landeo. "Your Majesty." Landeo showed a puzzled look to Leonor. "You will have 1 day to rectify the entire army and prepare to launch the final attack." Leonor looked up at the sky. It was still morning and he could launch the final attack tomorrow morning. "Ah!" Landeo showed a surprised expression. Before the city wall was broken, he attacked the final attack. "Don't understand." Leonor frowned. "Yes, Your Majesty." Landeo came to his senses and quickly accepted the order and said yes, and then hurriedly went to find the lords and nobles to reorganize the army. Leonor watched Landeo leave and wave his hands to the soldiers on the scene. "Stop. Let's rest today." After saying that, he ignored everyone and turned around and left. He also wanted to go to see the armored plat and prepare for tomorrow's battle at night. Landeo came again and reported to Leonor the prepared attack sequence. He prepared 1,000 of the strongest and bravest knights, equipped them with great swords, daggers and plate armor, as well as a large number of small boats and wooden ladders, intending to attack Qing City from the sea and land in one breath. "It's very good. Encourage those knights. My promise remains unchanged." At the same time, the first person who roars the flag will be rewarded with 100 households and 3,000 golden dragons. Leonor also gave the reward of killing the flag. "Yes," Landeo responded, silent for a long time, looked up and saw Leonor's quiet look, and couldn't help saying, "Your Majesty, please forgive me for your offense. The walls of Qing City have not been opened yet. Are you planning to attack the city from the sea? Thank you for your trust." Leonor looked at Landeo and smiled. It was difficult for Earl Giantling to hold on to the problem until now, but he was still not ready to say, "You just need to be prepared to siege the city. I will open the wall of tomorrow for you." "Okay." Landeo could only shut up and leave when he saw Leonor keep the secret. After Landeo left, the curtain of the tent was lifted, Nemilia and Tarini walked in, and the 2 sand snakes were holding the black armor belonging to Leonor in their hands. "Come on." Leonor opened his arms and asked Nemilia and Tarini to prepare their clothes, then put on the chain mail, then put on the plate armor, tie the arms, and finally tie it. "Skirt armor, My Majesty, how do you plan to open the walls of Qing City?" Nemilia tied Leonor's skirt armor and looked up at Leonor for asking. "Guess." Leonor looked down at Nemilia's pretty face full of exotic style, and the corners of her mouth curled slightly, not moved by her little movements. Nemilia wanted to make the soft pattern commonly used by noble women, but she found that she could not say please words, even if it had been brewing several times. I could open my mouth, but instead felt my arms tightening and I was picked up from the ground. Leonor grabbed Nemilia's arm, picked her up from the ground, and then kissed her thin lips directly, extremely domineering. Nemilia was at a loss. Tyrion next to her saw this situation and quietly stopped and stepped aside, watching Nemilia go from unfamiliar to responding, and then wait for her to stretch out her arms to hug Leonor. When the other party broke away, "It's good to see tomorrow," Leonor pulled away Nemilia, who was holding her like a leprechaun, as if a leprechaun was sucking yang energy, and let the flushed sand snake watch the show tomorrow. "What am I, yours?" Nemilia wiped her mouth and asked back. "Lovers." "Do you still want to be a queen?" Leonor replied without hesitation. "What if I want?" Nemilia asked. "Then you may have to wait." Leonor's eyes tilted slightly, and he replied as if it was true or false. "When is it? Are you really going to let me be the queen?" Nemilia felt that Leonor was joking. "Do you think I care about your identity as an illegitimate daughter?" "Unfortunately, in my opinion, an illegitimate daughter is no big deal." Leonor drew a cake for the sand snake. Chapter 74 Breaking the City. That night, Leonor hugged Nemilia and kissed and spent it in a cake for the sand snake. It was not that he didn't want to do anything, but that he didn't dare to waste it on women before the battle. Energy, after all, swords on the battlefield don't joke with him. When the sun rose again from the ridge in the east, the atmosphere in the entire military camp began to heat up. Perhaps the final battle is coming, or perhaps it is flirting with the opposite sex. Although Leonor has not slept all night, he is quite energetic. When he comes to the formation, he is still energetic and holds the spike of the seven-pointed star in his arms. "Finally came to Landeo, Your Majesty. When the drums sound here and your royal flag is raised, it is time for us to launch a general attack." Landeo pointed to the 7 battle drums around the command platform and the light flagpole standing in the middle. Leonor glanced at the bare flagpole, and the strong man with his upper body naked in front of each war drum, nodded slightly, looked up at the brilliant morning glow in the sky, and the nail in his arms raised the hammer, pointing the hammer to the distance. Qing City facing Liano with a hammer raised and pointed far away. Landeo was a little confused. Just when he didn't know whether he should order an attack, a loud bang came in his ears, and the earth trembled violently, making him unable to help it. He shrank his head and stood there on the spot. When he turned his head, the cave rock fort, which should have been curled up in the sea, was shaking like a giant. The giant city seemed to be stretching its body. The mountain surface that was originally the city wall was shattered into countless pieces in the loud bang, and purple spurted out from the cracks of the rocks. The green flames, white smoke and flames held countless gravels and threw them into the sky. The dust and smoke gathered into a mushroom cloud, rising slowly in the air. The spectacular scene, let alone the Blue Dao and the entire army, even Leano himself was shocked when all the dust settled. Half of Qing City facing the land had completely collapsed, revealing the empty mountain belly inside. You can see the palace decorated with gold and countless bright red lions roaring flags. When the rocks with gunpowder fell to the ground and the ocean, it made a huge sound to bring back everyone, including Landeo. Liano was also shocked by the explosion, but he remained calm. When the dust settled, he looked at the collapse of Qing City, and thought to himself that it was a pity, and commanded Landeo, "What are you waiting for? God bless my king, God bless my king." Landeo came to his senses, raised the sword in his hand, shouted while waving it, calling everyone's mind, and then ordered people to raise the flag and beat the drum. Dong 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 dong. The tight drum sounded, and the bright yellow flag embroidered with the crown and the stag were raised in the air. After the signal composed of the flag and the war drum conveyed the order of the general attack, in front of the dusty Qing City, 400 knights who had already been on standby immediately went to Qing City. An attack was launched. 400 knights in armor approached Qing City, mounted the wooden ladders and boards they carried to the trench that served as moats, and then passed through this natural danger one after another, approaching the broken mountain wall, and entered on the gravel inside the city. Land road prepared 1,000 people, including 400 people in front, and another 600 people prepared small boats from the side, preparing to go along the waterway from the cave port at the foot of the mountain behind Qing City. The water and land were used to attack, and the preparations were complete, but unfortunately he had no choice but to do so. The city wall that was less than the front was broken by gunpowder. The 400 people in the front were almost blocked and attacked the city without any obstruction. When the soldiers attacked the city, Landeo reacted and shouted loudly to the second and third siege teams, leaving the infantry responsible for clearing the roads. When riding a horse into the city, the knights who boarded the books on both sides also had to launch an attack. Receive the 400 people who were attacking the city, and not give the defenders in the city time to react in Qing City. After a moment of effort, there were fierce shouts of killing and swords colliding. Leonor took Brienne and others to ride on horses and followed the third group of soldiers into the city. The battle in the city was getting intense. There are no more than 10,000 people in Qing City, all of whom are direct relatives and loyal fans of the Lannister family. Apart from the elderly, weak, women and children who cannot fight, there are no more than 6,000 people who can pick up swords. They rely on them. The terrain in Qing City was fought to defend the streets, then retreated step by step, and finally retreated to the Hall of Heroes in Qing City. The Hall of Heroes is the core base camp in Qing City. This is a palace built with gold. When the walls of Qing City are lifted up, it is the most conspicuous even on the other side of the sea. The Hall of Heroes is widely known. In addition to the luxury here, there are hundreds of armors installed here. They are all heroic deaths among the Lannister family and their close relatives, the Seven Kingdoms and even the sea. The powerful knights on the other side admired them all, but today they will be bloody. Here Lyanna followed the army and came to the Hall of Heroes. He saw the hall covered with bright red flags and carpets, but there were no armor inside, only a few hundred pieces of armor and clothes that had been placed wooden shelf. Probably all the armor was worn on Lannister's warrior. Those armors are valuable only when worn on people, and they are just empty shells there. The crowd was still fighting in front of the Hall of Heroes. The plate-armored knights and Lannister's warriors were pushing each other. The armor was squeezed with the armor, and there was no room for wielding the sword. Only the cold-armored kids started with a short sword during the melee. The crowd was in a state of turmoil, and suddenly a loud roar was heard, and the warriors on both sides were forcibly separated. A white horse rushed out of the Hall of Heroes, and a shining man wearing golden armor, a golden cloak, and a golden lion helmet sat on it. The shining man waved a great sword and rushed through a road, swaying his sword in front of Lyanna's army. I'm Tywin Lannister, Leonor Baratheon, Leonor Baratheon, Leonor Baratheon. Tywin, wearing golden armor, shouted 3 times to calm the battlefield. Everyone's eyes looked at Leonor, who was wearing black armor, covered with squids and riding behind the army. Behind him is the king of the crowned stag flag. Tywin found Leonor's place from everyone's eyes and the yellow king flag, and pointed at the great sword in his hand. Leonor Baratheon, if you don't want to insult your ancestor's name, accept my duel. At this time, if you want to make a duel, your son should appear, not yourself, old man. Leonor looked at old Tywin, who was like a golden Saint Seiya, and while complaining in his heart, he reached out and wanted to ask Brienne next to him to take the big sword. Han Bing. This duel cannot be refused unless he is not present. Tywin Lannister. A decisive roar stopped Leonor's movements. The sound came from Oberyn behind him. I am Oberyn Martell. In the name of Queen Amelia, you will pay for my sister's life. Oberyn wore a brown light armor with metal plates and leather today, and he rode a horse. The black horse challenged her to claim her blood debt from her sister Ilya Martell. Chapter 75 End. Oberyn issued a challenge under the banner of seeking blood feud for his sister. After saying that, he didn't wait for Tywin to respond, and rode his horse out in the battle with a spear in his hand, running directly to Tywin, who was like a Saint Seiya, and killed him. Tywin challenged Leonor in a leader showdown. He never expected that Dunn's Red Viper would jump out to fight, and he had no time to react, so he had to ride a horse to fight Oberyn, and Tywin fought one-on-one in front of the two armies. Some people in Leonor's camp could not sit still. Lolas, wearing flowery armor and pointed helmets on his head, rode his horse in front of the formation with a sword and shouted, I am Loras Tyrell of the High Court, and under the witness of the 7 gods, I challenged Roland Cretch of the Rose Hall. Loras roared twice, and a strong man with a thick beard jumped out of the crowd. He held a sword and shield, stretched out his hand to push away the Lannister warrior blocking the road, walked directly to Loras, slapped the shield with his sword. Long he responded, I am Roland Cretch, the Lord of the Racket Hall, and I accept the challenge in the name of the 7 gods. Adhering to the principle of a knight's one-on-one challenge, Lolas directly crossed his legs and walked around the saddle, jumped off his mount, threw the sword to the follower next to him, and then took a battle axe from him after dancing the battle axe over his head. Lolas didn't even want to say anything on the scene. and directly gave a jump to the other side, but was blocked by the other party's shield with a bang. The axe blade slashed into the shield. The old Roland Kretsch looked a little difficult. Before he could fight back, the shield in his hand lightened and was pulled out by Loras with an axe. Loras pulled back the axe, took away the round shield from Roland's hand, and then slashed it with another axe, forcing the other party to dodge in a hurry. Xylulu, a horse neighed in the field. Tywin's horse's mount was killed by Oberon's spear, and Tywin, wearing golden armor, fell off the horse. Tywin was wearing golden armor, and even the cloak was woven from gold thread. It was extremely heavy and could only sit on the horse and move. Now he was dragged to the ground, and the cloak was crushed by the horse corpse, and he was wrapped in an instant. Their Oberon is not as knightly as Lola's. He sat directly on the horse and pulled the spear back, slapped the spear on Tywin's head, knocking the old lion dizzy, and the ruby-covered one on top of the head. The lion's helmet was swept off. Stop! At the same time when the old lion was attacked, the crowd made a loud shout, and James Lannister, dressed in gilded armor, emerged from somewhere, and cut off the black horse under a baron with one sword. Save his father, foul, it's regicide, this is a duel. The crowd was full of commotion and scolded. Both Brienne and other knights shouted loudly for James Lannister not to abide by the duel rules, and Abea next to Lyanna was about to rush up with a spear, but Nymeria was held back in the field. Although James Lannister intervened in the duel, he did not take advantage of the situation to rob Oberon, but turned around to help his father up. However, the old lion was not very grateful and directly reached out to push him away. The old lion pushed his son away, grabbed the golden cloak behind him, turned around and cut off the shackles of the golden cloak with his sword. Got rid of the heavy and shining equipment, and then walked back to Oberon without saying a word. Holding the hilt of the sword in both hands, he raised the sword over his head, signaling the Duke with Oberon to continue. Give me a spear. Oberon threw away the spear that appeared in his hand, then took the spear thrown by Abea and continued his duel with Tywin. Leonor Baratheon, in the name of the seven gods, I challenge you. If you lose, you will immediately admit defeat. James Lannister was anxious when he saw his father's desperate efforts. Raise your sword to challenge Leonor. Give it to me, Leonor said to Brienne, drew the great sword from her hand, feeling the lightness of the Valyrian steel sword, and then jumped off the horse and strode away. Go to James Lannister, I will put your armor in this hall, you are the only one. Leonor raised his sword over his head, gently slashed forward 2 times, and tried the distance. James Lannister didn't speak, holding a sword in one hand and picking up the round shield that Roland had just been knocked out by Lolas from the ground with the other. James, with one sword and the other shield, slowly approached, and Leonor looked at the regicide. After he entered the distance of the sword blade of the ice, he slashed over without hesitation with countless stripes of sword blade swung. James did not raise his shield, but instead greeted him with his sword blade, while protecting the shield beside him, and directly hit Leonor with a clanging sound. Half of the sword blade fell to the ground. James stopped moving forward with the shield hitting across the surface, and looked down at the sword that was slashing into his waist from one side. To be honest, if you don't challenge me, I'm going to put on you in a black robe, Leonor said to the incredible James. He was not going to stay any of Lannister's people except this James Lannister. The regicide did not speak and sent him a puzzled look. You killed Aerys II, and I found the wildfires he hid from the underground of King's Landing. Leonor answered the regicide's question. He was willing to save this guy's life because of the people of King's Landing. For some, James Lannister frowned, feeling his waist and ribs hurt, but before he could speak, he felt a dizzy moment, and a headless corpse in gold-plated armor appeared in his dim pupils. You've wasted your chance. Leonor pulled back the ice expressionlessly, shaking the blood beads from the sword on the handsome face of James Lannister. Seeing his son die in front of him and his head was cut off, the old lion Tywin could no longer resist Oberon's offensive, and was thrown down by him again, lying on the ground and trying to crawl towards his son's body. But one foot stepped on the vest. Blood is returned to blood. Oberon stepped on Tywin, smiled slightly at him, his hand raised his spear and fell. The tip of the spear penetrated from behind Tywin's head and penetrated from his throat. As soon as Lannister and his son died, a warm shout broke out on the scene, and they turned their eyes to Roland and Loras, who were finally playing the second game. At this time Roland threw away the shield in his hand and dealt with Loras, who was holding a battle axe, with only a sword. Feeling all the gazes, the pressure on the Lord of the Rabbit Hall suddenly increased, and Loras was like taking stimulants, and the battle axe in his hand was blowing one after another, one by one. Finally, with a click, The axe blade fell, and the metal helmet fragments flew up with a brain. The Lord of the Rose Hall and the teacher of James Lannister, Roland Cratch, was slapped by the Knight of Flowers. The axe splits his head and dies completely, except for the Lannister. The others who surrendered were exempted from death. Seeing that all 3 duels ended in victory, Leonor also ended the war, exempting the deaths of others in Qing City and reducing unnecessary losses. Resistance and killing his path to becoming a king will not be lacking in bones. Lannister of Qing City is the first, but definitely not the last. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.